Chapter 639. Among the people that Chu Xiu had offended, most of them were from Eastern Qi and Northern Yan. On the contrary, there were not many from Western Chu. This was especially so for the Xiahou clan. Not only had Chu Xiu killed Xiahou Zhen's only son with the identity of Lin Yi, but he had also killed many of the Xiahou clan's young disciples. Chu Xiu had also killed Xiahou Zhen's trusted subordinates with his original identity. This hatred was not small. But Xiahou Zhen also knew that it would not be easy to get rid of Chu Xiu with his own strength. The Xiahou clan did not belong to him alone. If he wanted to touch Chu Xiu, he would first have to consider whether someone from the Yinma clan would stand up to stop him. Therefore, the simplest way was to form an alliance and gather the strength of the entire Eastern Qi martial arts world to get rid of Chu Xiu. However, compared to the Northern Yan land, the alliance led by the Xiahou clan was slower and weaker. After all, the Xiahou clan had to persuade some Eastern Qi martial arts world forces to help. Moreover, some of those forces were not convinced that the Xiahou clan would be the leader of the alliance. On the other hand, the Northern Yan side was much smoother. Although Nie Renlong was not the strongest in the Northern Yan martial arts world, it was undeniable that Nie Renlong's reputation in the Northern Yan martial arts world was much stronger than that of the Xiahou clan in Eastern Qi. Most importantly, at the beginning when Nie Renlong was preparing to establish the alliance, most of the warriors had a wait-and-see attitude. There were even some who were a little disdainful. Nie Renlong indeed had some fame, but the overall strength of the Morgue village was not strong. If he wanted to be the leader of this alliance, he was afraid that it would not be enough. However, after the people from the Great Light Temple took the initiative to join the alliance, this group of people no longer held back, and even rushed to join the alliance. After all, the status of the Great Light Temple was not comparable to the Morgue village. Even the Great Light Temple was in the alliance, so why should others be reserved? On the other hand, the Xiahou clan was not so lucky. Although there was also a Chunyang Dao sect in Eastern Qi, the relationship between the Xiahou clan and Chunyang Dao sect was not good. Moreover, Chunyang Dao sect did things in a straightforward manner, and did not like to play tricks. At this time, in the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu was not cultivating. Instead, he was closely watching the news coming from the outside. Whether it was the Memorial Village or the Xiahou clan, the alliance of the Xiahou clan or Northern Yan land, the Gu clan, or the Xiahou clan had formed an alliance, they were so powerful that there was no need to hide it at all. The Ghost Hand Lord and other Chu Xiu clan side was Chu Xiu clan Xiu clan. They were already mentally prepared. Their lord's ability to attract hatred was so great. Now that his identity was exposed, there would be no way to resolve this peacefully. There would definitely be many people coming to seek revenge. However, their preparations were to come one after another. Who would have thought that this group of people would make such a big move? They directly formed a powerful alliance in the Northern Yan and Eastern Qi land, and assumed the posture of attacking the Guanzhong torture room by force. The Ghost Hand Lord and the others were panicking, but Chu Xiu, who was sitting in the main seat, was very calm. In the Guanzhong torture room, are there already people preparing to escape? Chu Xiu suddenly asked. The Ghost Hand Lord hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, "Indeed, but Lord, all the warriors from the Guanxi land did not escape. Those who escaped were almost all warriors from the other three lands. Among them, the Guannan land had the most people." The Guannan penal officer was Yin Batong, who had just been publicly executed by Chu Xiu on a groundless charge. Therefore, among the 4 places in Guanzhong, the Guannan land was the most resistant to Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu waved his hand casually and said, "In the face of a great enemy, it's good for some unstable people to leave. They won't get in the way. Don't worry." Mei Qinglian said, "There's no need to worry about them. You should worry about yourself first. The Eastern Qi and the Northern Yan martial arts world are preparing to form an alliance to suppress you. How are you going to stop them? Even if Senior Wei and the others can help you stop those people, they can't stop all of them. If not, you'd better hide in some secret places of the Yinma clan, and wait for the storm to pass before coming out." Mei Qinglian's words were for Chu Xiu's own good. She didn't expect that the Jianghu would be so chaotic. It was as if the Guanzhong torture room was going to be completely destroyed. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, It's easy to hide. But if I hide, the foundation of the Guangzhong torture room will be in vain. Besides, if I choose to hide, I won't have a chance to step out into the Jianghu in a short period of time. I have to bear this disaster by myself. Mei Qinglian frowned and said, "But how are you going to bear it? Even if you reach the level of martial arts grandmaster, you can't stop the simultaneous attack of the Eastern Qi and the Northern Yan alliances." Chu Xiu stood up and said in a low voice, "But why do I have to wait until they come to my door before I think of a defensive strategy? Waiting for death and facing the attacks of two alliances at the same time is no different from courting death." As his voice trailed off, Chu Xiu said to Ghost Hand Lord in a low voice, "Go select all the elites of the Guangzhong torture room, and then select 1,000 absolutely loyal martial artists. Tangye and Yin Bugui will lead them to the Northern Yan. At the same time, you will guard the Guangzhong torture room. If anything happens, immediately send someone to contact me. At the same time, hand these secret letters to these people." Chu Xiu threw a few secret letters to Ghost Hand Lord. Mei Qinglian didn't see what was written on them. She frowned and said, "What are you going to do? Also, who are these secret letters intended for?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I've said it before. Sitting and waiting for death isn't my style. Rather than waiting for those two clans to form an alliance and attack us, I might as well take the initiative and destroy one of the alliances first. These secret letters are my connections. Don't think that I, Chu Xiu, have enemies all over Jianghu. There is more than one person who is willing to help me in this critical moment." Mei Qinglian looked at Chu Xiu with her mouth agape. She really didn't expect this move. When faced with such a predicament, most people would either think of defense or escape. In the end, Chu Xiu was bold enough to go against the current and counterattack. She didn't know whether to say that Chu Xiu was bold or that Chu Xiu was arrogant. Chu Xiu turned to Mei Qinglian and said, "Saintess, please send a message to Senior Wei and ask him to help me stop the people from the Great Light Temple. The morgue is in the Northern Yan Alliance. Although it's far from the Great Light Temple, with the Great Light Temple's strength and status in the Northern Yan Alliance, I reckon that when I bring people to the Northern Yan Alliance, we will be noticed by the people from the Great Light Temple. I'm not afraid of other people, but if the Great Light Temple's 3 main meditation hall seats come, I won't be able to stop them. Also help me find Sheng Tianyao." Mei Qinglian asked curiously, "Why are you looking for Sheng Tianyao?" 9 Abandonment Sword. Sheng Tianyao was a martial arts master of the Yinma faction. However, his current identity was a high official of the Northern Yan royal family. He had also helped Chu Xiu to stop Nie Renlong. However, to be honest, although Sheng Tianyao's strength was not considered weak, he was not too strong either. It was not very meaningful for Chu Xiu to find him. Moreover, although Sheng Tianyao was also a member of the Yinma clan, he was not a member of Wei Shuya's clan. In the Yinma clan, he did not belong to anyone. He was just a rogue cultivator and a Devil Dao Grand Master. The last time he helped Chu Xiu was to give face to Mei Qinglian. It was just a harmless help. However, if he were to help Chu Xiu this time, he would have to face a large group of martial arts masters. Sheng Tianyao most likely would not take the risk. Chu Xiu understood what Mei Qinglian meant. He said in a deep voice, "Of course I'm not going to find Sheng Tianyao for help. I just want to see someone through Sheng Tianyao. Since Nie Renlong knows to borrow the Great Light Temple's power, do you think I don't know how to borrow power?" Mei Qinglian was surprised. "Whose power do you want to borrow?" "The Northern Yan Imperial Court." Although the Jianghu and the Imperial Court often cooperated, most of the time they were on opposing sides. This was especially true for the Northern Yan Imperial Court's actions over the years. There were many articles that could be written about it. Mei Qinglian looked deeply into Chu Xiu's eyes and said, "I hope you are confident this time and not gambling." Chu Xiu said plainly, "How can there be anything in this world that can be 100% confident? No matter how stable something is, there will always be some variables. In fact, people are gambling every moment of their lives. It's just that I believe that I can win." Regardless of whether Chu Xiu was gambling or just being overconfident, Mei Qinglian was already tied to Chu Xiu's chariot. She could only do as Chu Xiu said. She contacted Wei Shuya and helped Chu Xiu contact Sheng Tianyao. For Sheng Tianyao, If Mei Qinglian really wanted him to expose his identity and help Chu Xiu fight against Nie Renlong's Northern Yan demon-slaying alliance, Sheng Tianyao would probably decline. However, since Mei Qinglian only wanted to help Chu Xiu introduce the Northern Yan Emperor, he could still fulfill this small request. Furthermore, Sheng Tianyao was smart enough not to introduce Chu Xiu himself. After all, his identity was sensitive. If he were to introduce Chu Xiu, who was a member of the demonic Dao, who was in the eye of the storm, it would be easy to expose his identity. He was prepared to introduce Chu Xiu to the Northern Yan Emperor through the 13th Prince Xiang Chong. The 13th Prince had once wanted to recruit Chu Xiu, but unfortunately, Chu Xiu did not agree. But when he saw Chu Xiu this time, Xiang Chong was very excited. "Brother Chu, have you thought it through and decided to work for me?" Chu Xiu retorted. "Could it be that your highness doesn't know my identity? Now, I'm being hunted down by the righteous martial artists. There are countless people in this world who want me dead." Xiang Chong laughed. "Righteous path? Demonic path? So what? In my eyes, there are only those who can help me and those who can't. As long as Brother Chu agrees to help me, I will do my best to protect you." Xiang Chong looked at Chu Xiu sincerely. If it was anyone else, they would definitely be touched by Xiang Chong's expression. This Prince of Yan could be said to be a model of being courteous. Even though Chu Xiu was in so much trouble, he was still prepared to protect Chu Xiu. However, in actual fact, most of what these guys from the royal family said was false. It was the same for the 13th Prince, the Prince of Yan. Chapter 640. Extraordinary people naturally had their own extraordinary points. Xiang Chong, the 13th Prince, would shine brightly in the battle for the throne of Northern Yan in the future. Compared to the Xiang Chong of the past, Xiang Chong now appeared to be much more mature and experienced. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "I appreciate your highness's good intentions. However, since my identity has been exposed, then your highness should know that it is impossible for me to rely on others. Moreover, even if I really rely on your highness, would your highness really dare to use me?" Xiang Chong laughed dryly. Chu Xiu was right. Even if Chu Xiu really relied on him, Xiang Chong would not dare to use Chu Xiu without worry. Diabolism was diabolism after all. Who would dare to rely on someone from diabolism as a confidant? Xiang Chong coughed and said, "I wonder why Brother Chu is looking for me this time?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "I would like your highness, Prince of Yan, to introduce me. I would like to see his majesty." "See father?" Xiang Chong could not help but frown. Among the many sons of the Northern Yan Emperor Xianglong, although Xiang Chong was not the strongest, he was the most favored one. It was actually a very simple matter for him to let Xianglong see Chu Xiu. However, at this critical juncture, Chu Xiu had come to secretly seek an audience with the Northern Yan Emperor. This was too sensitive and Xiang Chong did not dare to act rashly. Chu Xiu said plainly, "Your Highness, don't worry. This is the capital of Northern Yan. I came alone. There are countless experts in the palace. Are you still worried that I will harm His Majesty? Moreover, you don't have to worry that I will speak nonsense. In front of His Majesty, even if I am from the Yinma clan, I will not speak nonsense. Your Highness has helped me this time. I will remember this favor and will definitely return it in the future." Chu Xiu's last sentence moved Xiang Chong. In fact, Xiang Chong really didn't care whether Chu Xiu belonged to the righteous path or the demonic path. As a member of the imperial court, although their attitudes towards the righteous path and the demonic path were somewhat different, the core was the same: vigilance and use. Chu Xiu was now famous. As the most outstanding warrior of the younger generation of the Hidden Devil bloodline, he represented some of the power of the Hidden Devil bloodline. It would not be a bad thing if he could get a favor from him in the future. Therefore, Xiang Chong thought for a moment and said, "Sure, but Brother Chu, father's temper isn't that good. You'd better watch your words." Chu Xiu nodded. Of course, he knew that Xianglong's temper wasn't good. It would be strange if a ruler who could lead the Northern Yan to counterattack a powerful country like Eastern Qi had a good temper. For hours after Xiang Chong left, an old eunuch led Chu Xiu into the imperial city through a small gate. After all, Chu Xiu's identity was somewhat special. It was somewhat inappropriate for a diabolist to openly enter the imperial city through the gate. Chu Xiu had seen the imperial palace of Eastern Qi. Of course, it was only the periphery, but it was very magnificent. Compared to the imperial palace of Eastern Qi, the Northern Yan imperial palace lacked some luxurious decorations, but it was more dignified and solemn. The entire Northern Yan imperial palace was built in dark colors. The grayish-black ground and the pitch-black palace made people feel slightly depressed. However, the Northern Yan imperial palace was still dark, so it was normal to build the imperial palace like this. Even among the Northern Yan imperial family, even the dragon robes were black in the past, and they worshipped the black dragon. Later, he heard from some necromancers that dragons were respected by the 9-clawed golden dragon. That was why the Northern Yan imperial family changed their dragon robes to gold. Chu Xiu followed the old eunuch to a side hall, where Xiang Chong was already waiting. The lights in the side hall were dim, making the atmosphere even more depressing. At the top sat an old man wearing a dragon robe and a black dragon pattern blanket. This person was the Northern Yan Emperor, the one who had once joined forces to counterattack Eastern Qi with the power of a weak country, Xiang Long. If one only looked at his appearance, Xiang Long was actually very ordinary, to the point that if he did not wear the dragon robe, he would be an ordinary old man. However, as he opened his squinted eyes, they bloomed with a sharpness like the edge of a knife. In all fairness, among the 3 emperors of the current world, Xiang Long was the most outstanding one. The Western Chu imperial family was content in a corner, and some of the members of the imperial family did not engage in proper business. Some liked martial arts, and some liked witchcraft and other miscellaneous things. Therefore, in terms of national strength, Western Chu had never been considered strong. Of course, this was also due to the terrain of Western Chu, and the Eastern Qi emperor, Lu Haochang, was famous for being incompetent. Other than living a relatively long life, he had almost no redeeming qualities. Of course, as an emperor, Lu Haochang could not be said to be muddle-headed. He could only be said to be a little lacking in ability. And this Northern Yan emperor, Xiang Long, was recognized by the world as a hero of the current age. Eastern Qi was located in the Central Plains, with a vast territory and abundant resources. At that time, Western Chu was a small country in the south, and Northern Yan was a small country in the north. In any case, in the eyes of Eastern Qi, they were both small countries. At the most serious time, Northern Yan was almost destroyed by Eastern Qi. Until Xiang Long ascended the throne, he forgot to eat and sleep in the early stage, keeping a low profile and patiently developing the national strength. Later on, he joined forces with the Northern Yan martial artists to counterattack Eastern Qi. Yang Gongdu was in charge of these matters in the past. In the end, the behemoth Eastern Qi was defeated by the Northern Yan. Even the Wei Kingdom, which was attached to Eastern Qi, was swallowed by the Northern Yan, and became Wei County. If not for the fact that the Northern Yan's foundation was too weak to support a long-range attack on Eastern Qi, Northern Yan might have already become the overlord of the Central Plains. At this time, Xiang Long was also looking at Chu Xiu. Rather than saying he was looking, it was more like he was sizing him up. Chu Xiu cupped his hands at Xiang Long and greeted, "Greetings, Your Majesty." With a light snort, Xiang Long said in a deep voice, "Why are you not kneeling before me?" Chu Xiu replied, "I am not a subject of the Yan kingdom. Why should I kneel before its king?" Xiang Long snorted, "I heard that you, Chu Xiu, are from the Yan kingdom. What, just because you have some power and background, you don't care about your own country anymore?" Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Your Majesty, I am afraid you have misunderstood. I only made a name for myself in the Yan kingdom, but I am not a citizen of the Yan kingdom. To be precise, I am from Wei County, the Wei County that Your Majesty destroyed. Of course, with my identity, I have long lost my home and country. People say that the demonic path is arrogant and perverse, and I am indeed so. Other than the masters who taught me, I don't even bow to the heavens or the earth." Xiang Long laughed coldly. "Don't even bow to the heavens or the earth? You encourage Xiang Chong to bring you to me because you want to use the power of the Northern Yan court to help you fend off this disaster. In the end, you can't even kneel to me. You are an arrogant and rude person. Why should I help you?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "Your Majesty, You have misunderstood. I am actually not used to asking for help. In this world, any debt can be repaid, but a debt of gratitude is the most difficult. Moreover, the things that I ask for are not necessarily stable. What I like is cooperation, mutual benefit. With benefits in hand, everyone will contribute, and no one will lose out. Xianglong was so angry that he laughed. What a joke! You Chuxiu, a junior, dare to come and talk to me about cooperation? Do you think you are qualified to talk to me about cooperation? If it were Wei Shuya of the Yinma clan, it would be more like it. Do you know how much official business I have to deal with every day and how much national affairs I have to think about? You, a junior, came here to waste my time. Do you know what crime it is to deceive the emperor? Or do you think that because you are from the Yinma clan, I dare not kill you? As he shouted the last word, the aura and killing intent that bloomed from Xianglong's body made even Chu Xiu's heart turn cold. In fact, Xianglong did not have much cultivation in martial arts. For a person of royal birth like him, he might be able to cultivate when he was a prince, but after he ascended to the throne, where would he find the time to cultivate? He could only treat martial arts as something to strengthen his body, supplemented by some elixirs and other things to extend his lifespan. However, because he had to deal with official business every day, he worked too hard, so his lifespan could not be extended by much. On the other hand, mediocre people like Eastern Qi Lu Haochang had less to worry about and lived longer. In terms of strength, Chu Xiu could easily take Xianglong's life with a light flick of his finger. However, Xianglong had fought all over the world, and the number of people who had died by his hand was uncountable. These emperors were the ones who had the most blood on their hands. Moreover, who knew how many martial arts masters loyal to the Northern Yan royal family were lying in ambush around this spacious hall. If Chu Xiu dared to act rashly, he would be the first to die. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "Your Majesty, please don't be angry. Although I am a junior in the Yinma clan, my words still carry some weight. Moreover, I know what Your Majesty needs. The people who want to kill me this time are the same kind of people that Your Majesty wants to kill." Xianglong suddenly put away the anger on his face, as if the murderous person just now was not him. He asked calmly, "What do you mean?" Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, "In the past, Your Majesty joined forces with the Northern Yin martial artists to fight against the Eastern Qi. It was a brilliant move. Martial arts had no national boundaries, but martial arts sects did. Once the Eastern Qi destroyed the Northern Yin, the Northern Yin martial artists would inevitably be suppressed by the Eastern Qi martial artists. With the joint forces of the court and the martial artists, we finally counterattacked the Eastern Qi. This is the most outstanding achievement since Your Majesty ascended the throne." Xianglong's face softened a little. After all, what Chu Xiu said was his proudest achievement. For so many years, from the founding of the Northern Yan to the generation before Xianglong, the Northern Yan had always been suppressed by the Eastern Qi. It was not until his generation that the Northern Yan turned the tables and counterattacked the Eastern Qi, even causing the Eastern Qi to suffer a great loss. Although the Northern Yan was still not on par with the Eastern Qi in terms of foundation, it was widely acknowledged that the Northern Yan was already a superpower that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Eastern Qi. But Chu Xiu then said, "But Your Majesty should have noticed the repercussions of that battle." The imperial court joined forces with the martial artists to fight against the Eastern Qi, but after the battle, many benefits were distributed to the martial artists of the Northern Yan martial artists. This also caused the martial artists of the Northern Yan martial artists to be so arrogant, to the point where they have no respect for the imperial court of the Northern Yan. Your Majesty should have noticed that the Northern Yan martial artists are too big to shake off. Chapter 641. Chu Xiu had noticed the subtle relationship between the Northern Yan martial world and the Northern Yan imperial court when he was in Northern Yan. They could work together when they were facing a common enemy, but what would happen after that? Even if they did not fall out with each other, there would still be some conflicts. What the imperial court wanted was absolute control over their territories, while the forces of the martial world wanted absolute freedom. For example, sects like the Divine Martial Sect of Southern Yan. Xianglong wished that the Divine Martial Sect had the final say in the land of Southern Yan, and even the imperial court could not do anything about it. Of course, the imperial court would never tolerate such a thing. The Northern Yen martial world was a little weaker, so they did not have the Dragon Riders' imperial army, an armed force that belonged to the imperial court, like Eastern Qi. However, as a mighty ruler, Xianglong would not tolerate any provocation from the Northern Yen martial world, even if they were not powerful enough. Therefore, the Northern Yen martial world could be seen garrisoned around the counties and prefectures of the Northern Yen martial world, to prevent the martial sects of the Northern Yen martial world from going too far. However, it was also because of this that the Northern Yen martial world had to reduce their investment in the borderlands. Of course, the three kingdoms were at a stage of steady development, so it was not possible for them to fight each other for the time being. Xianglong stared at Chu Xiu and said coldly, "Are you trying to say that you can help me deal with those sects of the martial world that do not obey me? Chu Xiu, do you think I will make the same mistake twice? When the Yen kingdom was in danger, I worked with the martial world of the Yen kingdom. Although we managed to defeat Eastern Qi, it caused the martial sects of the Yen kingdom to be unable to get rid of them. Now if I work with you fiends, I might be able to suppress these martial sects of the Yen kingdom. But what if you take the opportunity to grow stronger? What should I do then? Drive away the wolf from the front door, and let in the tiger from the back door. In the end, the Yen kingdom will have to face a formidable enemy. When I decided to work with the martial world of the Yen kingdom, it was because things had indeed come to a critical juncture. However, the Yen kingdom has not reached that stage yet. Why should I join hands with you bunch of dangerous diabolism villains?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Your Majesty is wrong. It's safest for you to join hands with the Yinma clan, because we don't have a stable stronghold. Those martial arts sects have their roots in the Northern Yen. It will be very difficult for His Majesty to completely suppress them, because their foundations are all in the Northern Yen. Your Majesty should know the situation of my Yinma lineage. My body is like floating duckweed. If His Majesty cooperates with us, we will be his blades. If the Northern Yen court gives us protection, we will kill for His Majesty. It's that simple. If Your Majesty ever gets tired of using us, you can just throw us away. You can even push all the blame onto us. The imperial court will still be the imperial court. You don't have to worry about us. We will never threaten the interests of the Northern Yen." Xiangchong stared at Chu Xiu dumbfounded. How could there be such conditions? Chu Xiu had actually pointed out all of his weaknesses. Wasn't he putting himself in a perilous situation? Xianglong squinted at Chu Xiu. His face was expressionless, and he couldn't see anything wrong. After a while, Xianglong said, "You told me all this. Aren't you afraid that in the end, I will really abandon the Yinma lineage and even kill you? You should know that once the cunning rabbit is dead, the hound will be cooked." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "To be honest, I am afraid, but the entire Yinma lineage is not. In the past, all the righteous sects failed to kill the Yinma lineage. Although the Northern Yen court is strong, it's still not enough. And to say something taboo, if His Majesty doesn't want to use us in the future, just say the word. The Yinma lineage will have other places to go. But if His Majesty wants to be ruthless, it will only make an enemy out of nothing. In short, I came here to borrow the power of the Northern Yen court to overcome this crisis. At the same time, I am also here to hand over a knife to the Northern Yen court. With the knife of the Yinma lineage in hand, I will kill whoever His Majesty wants to kill in the future." Xianglong didn't speak. After a long silence, he suddenly chuckled and said, "You Jianghu people always like to talk about hypocritical principles. Colluding with the evil cult is the scum of the Jianghu. I wonder what the court is doing with the evil cult?" A smile also appeared on Chu Xiu's face. He knew it was a success. Can the matter of the court be called collusion? That's too unpleasant to hear. It's called enlistment. Xianglong stood up and said, "Enlistment? Very well. I don't care if they are righteous or demonic if they can be of use to me. Chu Xiu, I can help you block this crisis, but the Northern Yen court strength is limited. Although you represent the Yinma lineage, I also know that not all of the Yinma lineage's power will be on my side. So this time, the Northern Yen court will only help you within the limits of our power. We will not use our full strength, and it is impossible for us to use our full strength. If you can live, then what you just said to me will be effective. If you die, then you can only blame your own bad luck. Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, "Rest assured, Your Majesty. There are countless people in this world who want me dead, but I am still alive and well." With that, Chu Xiu took his leave and left the palace. 13th brother, you may leave as well, Xiang Long said. Xiang Chong nodded and quickly bowed before leaving the palace. After Xiang Chong left, Xiang Long said, "Imperial advisor, what do you think of this matter? Is it correct for me to cooperate with Chu Xiu and the Yinma lineage?" In a dark corner, an old man wearing a Taoist robe walked out. The robe the old man wore was very strange. It was pitch black, and the embroidery on the back was not the yin-yang tai chi pattern commonly seen in Taoism. Instead, it was an evil yin-yang impermanence diagram. The black and white impermanents were intertwined at an extremely evil angle, forming the shape of a tai chi. The more one looked at it, the more evil it seemed. The old man in the Taoist robe had a goatee, and his eyebrows were high. He held a sword in his left hand and a horsetail whisk in his right. He stood behind Xiang Long and said in a low, hoarse voice, "I see that this child is rebellious and ambitious. He is a sign of hindrance to his master. If Your Majesty wants to use this person, please be careful. Moreover, the Yinma lineage is not that simple. I have come into contact with them before. They are a group of madmen who want to revive the Kunlun devil cult. We must be very careful when cooperating with them." Xiang Long did not say anything. He just laughed and said, "Hindrance to his master? Imperial advisor, you should know that there is no one under the heavens that I can't use." That Yang Gongdu was a talented man, and his ambition was no less than Chu Xiu. But in the end, with just a word from me, he had to leave the Yin kingdom with his tail between his legs. If not for the fact that he had indeed contributed to Great Yin, and some of his meritorious deeds cannot be erased, do you think he could leave the Yin kingdom alive? Upon hearing that, the old Taoist bowed his head even lower and quickly said, "You are right, Your Majesty. Your Majesty is the Lord of Destiny. Even if Chu Xiu is the rebellious Bone Seven Murders, Your Majesty will still be able to capture him." Xiang Long laughed in confusion. While walking to the back he said, "Rest assured, Imperial advisor. The reason why I'm cooperating with Chu Xiu and the Yinma lineage is just to reduce the losses that Great Yin will suffer when suppressing those forces in the martial world. Chu Xiu is a member of the Yinma lineage, and I've never been able to trust them. You, on the other hand, are my confidant." "Thank you, Your Majesty." The old Taoist bowed his head, but a strange gleam could be seen in his eyes. After leaving the Northern Yan Imperial Palace, Chu Xiu immediately returned to the Guanzhong torture room. At the moment, Wei Shuya had arrived at the Guanzhong torture room, and he had brought Zhao Qingping, Luo Sansong, and some other warriors who had followed Chu Xiu to carry out the mission of annihilation. These people were very convinced by Chu Xiu, and they were also shocked when they learned Chu Xiu's identity. This man was indeed extraordinary. It was not strange for a man to have two identities. In fact, many people from the Yinma lineage were like this. But a man had pushed both identities to the first and second place on the Longhu list, which was a little shocking. Moreover, it was not only Luo Sansong and the others who came, but also some warriors from the phaseless demon sect that Mr. Lu had brought with him. After all, the phaseless demon sect was not Wei Shuya's subordinates, and they could only be said to be on good terms with Wei Shuya. Therefore, at this time, the phaseless demon sect had sent Mr. Lu and these warriors to give face to Wei Shuya and Chu Xiu. This was a favor that Chu Xiu had to remember. After seeing Wei Shuya, Chu Xiu told Wei Shuya the conditions that he had discussed with the Northern Yin Emperor Xiang Long. After listening, Wei Shuya looked at Chu Xiu with a faint smile and said, "You act first and report later?" Chu Xiu said to Xiang Long that he could represent the Yinma lineage, or at least the attitude of Wei Shuya's lineage. In the end, after getting Xiang Long's reply, Chu Xiu said this to Wei Shuya. What was this if not acting first and reporting later? Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Senior Wei, don't worry about those details. I just made a verbal promise with Xiang Long. If you don't agree, at worst, I won't need the support from the Northern Yan side. The deal will be invalid." Wei Shuya looked at Luo Sansong and the others, sighed and said, I'm old and it doesn't matter where I stay. But these young people, either because of inheritance or because of coincidence, joined the Yinma lineage and became my subordinates. I can't promote them, but I can't hold them back either. If they follow me, they will always hide in the dark and rarely make a move. If they stay for a long time, they will become useless. It's better to follow you to the northern Yan and fight for a future. Luo Sansong and the others hurriedly bowed to Wei Shuya and said, Thank you, Senior Wei. After they joined the Yinma lineage, they rarely made a move. Because of the Yinma lineage's rules, and because they were under Wei Shuya's command, there was not much for them to do. For these warriors in their prime, it was not time for them to cultivate in seclusion all day. Instead of hiding in the dark all day and cultivating with limited resources, it was better to follow Chu Xiu to fight in the outside world. They thanked Wei Shuya. One was to thank Wei Shuya for protecting them all these years, and the other was to thank Wei Shuya for helping them. Chapter 642. Eastern Yan Leping County, the headquarters of the mortuary manor. Usually, there were many martial artists visiting the mortuary manor. Now that it was the day of the alliance, the number of martial artists who came to the mortuary manor was even higher. Looking at this scene, Nie Renlong couldn't help but sigh with emotion. If Donglu didn't die, the foundation he laid for the mortuary manor today, and the momentum it created could all be passed down. How happy would Donglu be when he saw this scene? Losing a son in middle age was the greatest sorrow. But in the blink of an eye, Nie Renlong had already put away the sorrow in his eyes. For him, now was not the time to grieve. The mortuary manor's name would be passed down through the ages. At this time, a martial artist at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm came to Nie Renlong's side and reported, Manor Lord, almost everyone is here. Nie Renlong waved his hand and said, Has the Huangfu clan from the northern drifting snow city arrived? That person shook his head and said hesitantly, Not yet, but Manor Lord, the northern drifting snow city and the mortuary manor have long had enmity. They shouldn't be coming. As for the Huangfu clan, it would be fine if you invited them to make up the numbers, but you invited the old ancestor of the Huangfu clan. I'm afraid it will be a little difficult. Nie Renlong furrowed his brows. The fact that these two clans did not come was out of his expectations. He had guessed that these two clans would come. The northern drifting snow city did have enmity with Nie Renlong, but this matter involved the entire northern Yan pugilistic world. There was no reason for the northern drifting snow city to be absent. Even if he didn't want to increase the prestige of the mortuary manor, he had to consider his own reputation. Bai Hantian wasn't a stupid and petty person. He had no reason not to come. As for the Huangfu clan, Nie Renlong had personally sent a letter to them, explaining the importance of their relationship. The Huangfu clan had kept a low profile for so many years. It was time for them to make their presence known. Moreover, the Huangfu clan had already promised Nie Renlong, so there was no reason for them not to keep their word. Nie Renlong frowned and said, Let's wait for a while. One of these two clans is in the northern lands, and the other is in the western Yan country. I'm afraid there are too many people. After waiting for another 4 hours, there was still no sign of the two sects outside the morgue. Inside the morgue, there was a hubbub of voices. The people inside were probably impatient. Nie Renlong had a bad feeling in his heart, but he couldn't care less at this moment. He said, Forget it. Let's not wait for those two. The Alliance Conference will begin immediately. As he spoke, Nie Renlong turned around and entered the morgue. At this moment, the morgue was filled with a hubbub of voices. Seeing Nie Renlong walk in, everyone cupped their hands towards him and said, Manor Lord Nie. Nie Renlong flicked his sleeves and walked straight to the central high platform. He said in a deep voice, 500 years ago, the Kunlun devil cult wreaked havoc in Jianghu. The demons rose and the righteous martial arts world fell into its darkest moment. Fortunately, the sect leader of the real martial arts sect, Senior Ning Xuanji, took action and killed the devil cult leader, Dugu Weiwei. With the help of countless righteous seniors who fought to the death, the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed and the world returned to its original state. But now, the devil cult has the momentum to make a comeback. Chu Xiu has used two identities to run amok in Jianghu. He has done countless cruel and evil things. Countless people in Jianghu have died tragically in his hands. At this moment, he has even occupied the Guanzhong torture room, causing the hidden devil cult to have the momentum to make a comeback. In the past, our seniors have sacrificed their lives and shed their blood to completely suppress the devil cult. Now that it has come to our generation, how can we let them harm Jianghu again? Today, we are fortunate to have the head of the Vajra Yard of the Great Light Temple, Master Su Yan, Master Yan Huainan of the Divine Martial Sect, Sect Leader Feng Datong of the Giant Spirit Sect, and the others to come together to form an alliance. I am extremely grateful for that. At this moment, the martial arts world of Eastern Qi is also preparing to form an alliance to attack the Guanzhong torture room and destroy the evil Chu Xiu. The Northern Yan martial arts world naturally cannot be left behind. Manor Lord Nye is right. Cheers immediately came from below. Especially the martial artists who came from small forces, they were even more excited. Although most of them were actually not interested in killing the devil cult's villains, they were tempted by Nie Renlong's promise. Not to mention things like reputation. Now that Chu Xiu was entrenched in the Guanzhong torture room, once the Guanzhong torture room was destroyed, half of the resources and treasures in the Guanzhong torture room would belong to them. As for the people sitting in the main seats, the Great Light Temple did not care about those miscellaneous things. And the Divine Martial Sect also cared about their reputation, so they naturally would not fight with them for those miscellaneous things. Only the Giant Spirit Sect would get a share of the things. The leader of the Giant Spirit Sect, Giant Spirit General Feng Datong, was a burly middle-aged man. Although he looked rough, he was actually very meticulous. Actually, Feng Datong did not have to come to the alliance at the Memorial Manor this time. The Giant Spirit Sect did not have any grudges with Chu Xiu, and the Giant Spirit Sect had a large number of people. They were mainly in charge of business such as escorts and transportation. They traveled between the three countries and did not belong to any country. However, in Feng Datong's view, this was an opportunity for the Giant Spirit Sect, a chance for them to make a name for themselves in the underworld. All along, the strength of the human and six gangs was relatively weak, so they were not valued by the underworld. Therefore, each gang was thinking of a strategy to develop. Among them, the World Alliance was the strongest. Chen Qingdi had used his iron fists to conquer a vast territory. Even if he was the only one left in the World Alliance, he was enough to support the entire gang. The Memorial Manor was very similar to the World Alliance. They both relied on Nie Renlong's reputation. As long as Nie Renlong did not die, the Memorial Manor would still have this reputation in the underworld. The wind-sweeping building specialized in wind intelligence, so it did not require much strength. The Jiangshan Pavilion was far away in the South China Sea. It was said that it was a gang created by a group of fallen royalty. It rarely participated in the disputes of the Central Plains warriors, so its strength was unknown. The rest of the beggar gang spread throughout the underworld. You would never know which of the seemingly sloppy beggars were real beggars, and which were experts of the beggar gang. In short, the beggar gang's strength was a mystery. Not to mention the gang leader who was in seclusion. The beggar gang had never gathered for so many years. Of the 6 great gangs, the weakest one was the Giant Spirit Gang. They didn't even have a target. Although the Giant Spirit Sect had a lot of people now. If something happened, the Giant Spirit Sect would be the easiest to be removed from the list of the 6 gangs. Therefore, this time, Feng Datong did not even wait for Nie Renlong's invitation, and took the initiative to join the alliance. He wanted to fight for a reputation that would bring the Giant Spirit Sect into the category of righteous sections. Feng Datong stood up and said in a deep voice, "It's only been a few hundred years since the demonic path wreaked havoc in the underworld. We can't forget this lesson. Although our Giant Spirit Sect rose from the wilderness, we also know that everyone has a responsibility for the safety of the underworld. Since Villa Master Nye has gathered all of us here, then I ask Villa Master Nye to take over the position of Alliance Master. We will naturally listen to your orders." When Nie Renlong heard that, an imperceptible smile appeared at the corner of his lips. Feng Datong was very sensible. He, Feng Datong, did not have the chance to take the position of alliance leader. Therefore, pushing him to be the alliance leader now was also a form of good karma. However, Nie Renlong still declined. There are so many famous martial Dao grandmasters and experts from the major sects here. I dare not act rashly. Su Yan said calmly, since Villa Master Nie was the one who suggested this alliance, you will naturally be the alliance leader. The Great Light Temple will only be in charge of taking action. Yen Huainan, on the other hand, had the intention to be the leader of this alliance. However, when he saw Feng Datong and the Temple of Great Light's empty words and their attitudes, he also knew how strong they really were. He had no choice but to say, I have no objections to Manor Lord Nie being the leader of this alliance. Just as Nie Renlong was about to humbly decline and agree, the door to the morgue was suddenly pushed open. Nie Renlong frowned. Who was it that did not abide by the rules? He had already ordered that when the alliance was in progress, no one was allowed to come in and disturb them. However, as the door was pushed open, a thick smell of blood rushed out. This made Nie Renlong's heart sink as he vaguely guessed something. The next moment, demon qi drifted in from outside the morgue. In an instant, dark clouds covered the sky and shrouded the entire morgue. Chu Xiu casually tossed aside the two corpses that had been turned into dried corpses by the great demon blood technique, and said with a smile, if you ask me, you righteous path people are all hypocrites. You want to give away the position of alliance leader. You obviously want it in your heart, but you say that you don't want it. Now you don't have to fight anymore. I, Chu, have come to you. If you want to kill me, come. As Chu Xiu's voice fell, on the walls of the morgue, Chu Xiu's subordinates, Tangye Luo Sansong, and the other hidden devil clan martial artists all leaped over the walls. They looked at the people inside the morgue with murderous intent. The demon qi in the periphery was getting stronger and stronger. This was a formation plate refined by Gongshu Yuan. It was not very useful, but it could isolate the breath and emit strong demon qi. It could suppress the opponent and enhance the strength of the user of the demon skill. In the blink of an eye, the righteous alliance that was still impassioned became the side being besieged. This caused everyone present to be unable to recover from their shock. Why did the roles suddenly turn around? Nie Renlong looked at Chu Xiu and gnashed his teeth. Chu Xiu, how dare you take the initiative to attack? Nie Renlong could not wait to swallow Chu Xiu alive when he saw his true enemy who killed his son. Moreover, he really did not expect Chu Xiu to choose this time to take the initiative to attack. The people he had offended in Jianghu were not only the northern Yan, but also the eastern Qi. Chu Xiu's response was either to escape or to fight back. If he took the initiative to attack, was he not afraid that the Guanzhong torture room would be destroyed by the Eastern Qi alliance? Moreover, this was the northern Yan. Where did he get the courage to come to the northern Yan and act presumptuously? Was he not afraid that the righteous sects of the northern Yan would attack and kill him? Chapter 643. All of a sudden, the hunters had become the hunted. Everyone present was not used to it. They had formed an alliance to encircle and annihilate Chu Xiu. But Chu Xiu had the audacity to come knocking on their door. However, they soon sneered inwardly. This was the northern Yan. Chu Xiu had come knocking on their door in broad daylight with such an arrogant attitude. By now, the Great Light Temple and other righteous sects must have noticed. As long as they could delay them for a while, Chu Xiu and the others would not be able to leave northern Yan. Nie Renlong said coldly, Chu Xiu, since you have come to seek your own death, it will save us some effort. We will first keep all of you in northern Yan, then we will break into the Guanzhong torture room, and capture all of you demonic cultivators in one fell swoop. Chu Xiu's lips curled into a cold smile as he said, Manor Lord Nie, I'm actually a very soft-hearted person at times. You're already so old, and you've lost your son in your middle age. You must be very sad, so I'm prepared to fulfill your wish and send you down to reunite with your son. How about it? Nie Renlong's expression immediately turned extremely dark. He was just about to curse out angrily when Chu Xiu waved his hand and bellowed, Kill! As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic cultivators immediately pulled out the weapons in their hands. With the support of the formation's demonic energy, they charged towards the people below. Although Wei Shuya and the Northern Yan Imperial Court could help Chu Xiu block part of the forces, this was Northern Yan after all. It was better to end the battle quickly. Most importantly, Chu Xiu did not know the extent of the alliance with Eastern Qi. A sneak attack could only be used once. When he returned to the Guanzhong torture room, he would have to face a tough battle. Therefore, the Northern Yan side had to end the battle quickly, so that he could prepare for his return to the Guanzhong torture room. Although Chu Xiu was ridiculing Nie Renlong, the expressions of Su Yan and the others were not looking too good either. Chu Xiu's actions were a blatant insult to the entire Northern Yan sect and the martial arts world. Just as they were about to make a move, they saw three figures standing in front of Su Yan and the others. They were Mei Qinglian, Mr. Lu, and Lu Hongya. Mei Qinglian was the strongest. She directly faced off against the Temple of Great Light's empty words. The great art of the beautiful girl was extremely evil. Although Mei Qinglian's martial arts were not strong in a direct confrontation, her fighting skills were top-notch. Even though Su Yan's explosive power was astonishing, he could not defeat Mei Qinglian in a short time. Mr. Lu's opponent was Yan Huainan of the Divine Force sect. Yan Huainan was ranked on the Wind Cloud roll, and was considered a talent of his generation. The reason the Divine Force sect was able to become one of the 7 sects and 8 schools was all because of Yan Huainan. However, Mr. Lu's strength was not weak either. When he was at the oneness of heaven and man realm, he was an expert at the pinnacle of this realm. Now that he had entered the Grandmaster realm, his strength actually far surpassed many other martial artists of the same level. After Mr. Lu entered the Grandmaster realm, he had long wanted to find a famous expert in the martial arts world to spar with and test out his skills. However, he had never been able to do so. Now his wish was finally fulfilled. The only one who was at a disadvantage was Lu Hongya. Although he was also a martial Dao master, he had only been a martial Dao master for a short period of time, and he was not as talented as Mr. Lu. Furthermore, due to the inheritance, Lu Hongya's martial arts could not compare to Feng Datong of the Giant Spirit Gang. After exchanging a few blows, he was already at a disadvantage. However, Chu Xiu did not ask too much of him. It was fine as long as Lu Hongya could hold on for a short time without being defeated. Endless demonic aura surged into Chu Xiu's body. Chu Xiu's strength was raised to the extreme. Chu Xiu was already holding the hatred saber of the 7 demon sabers in his hand. As he slashed down with the saber, majestic demonic aura surged into it, triggering boundless hatred. As soon as the battle ended, Chu Xiu used his ultimate killing move. There was hatred in Nie Renlong's heart, and it was boundless hatred. The death of his son was absolutely irreconcilable. At that moment, Chu Xiu stood before Nie Renlong. Even without using the 7 demon saber, Chu Xiu could sense Nie Renlong's hatred. Therefore, using the hatred saber at that moment was undoubtedly a good choice. The instant Chu Xiu drew his saber, Nie Renlong laughed maniacally. His entire body was enveloped by the hatred of the hatred saber, but he did not choose to fight it head-on. Instead, he took the initiative to fuse with the hatred in his heart. In that instant, Nie Renlong's eyes turned crimson. Wisps of demonic aura surged into his body. The demonic aura released by the array was originally prepared for the demonic cultivators on Chu Xiu's side. However, at that moment, it could take the initiative to surge into Nie Renlong's body. With a loud bang, the demonic aura around Nie Renlong exploded. It was even more intense than Chu Xiu's. When he used the heaven and earth cloud hand, what he stirred was not the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, but the boundless demonic aura. As he moved his hands, the demonic aura condensed into a cyclone, directly enveloping Chu Xiu. Before the hatred saber landed, the momentum of the saber had already been shattered. Chu Xiu's body was torn apart in the cyclone. In the end, with a loud bang, Chu Xiu's entire body was sent flying more than 10 feet away. After calming the boiling blood in his body, Chu Xiu put away the 7 demon saber. There was a solemn look in his eyes. The 7 demon saber was useless to Nie Renlong. In fact, Nie Renlong's strength had increased tremendously. He was a lot stronger than before he entered the demonic state. His eyes were crimson, but he still maintained his rationality. Surrounded by demonic aura, Nie Renlong, who looked more like a demonic cultivator than Chu Xiu, said coldly, "Chu Xiu, this is all thanks to you." Entering the demonic state was a crisis, but it was also an opportunity. The last time Nie Renlong entered the demonic state because of Nie Donglio's death, he was also severely injured. However, after he recovered, he adapted to the powerful strength that came with entering the demonic state. He also adapted to the attribute of the demonic aura. Nie Renlong had never cultivated demonic techniques, but he did not die after entering the demonic state once. His demonic nature was already natural. Although the hatred saber could trigger the hatred in Nie Renlong's heart, Nie Renlong's hatred had reached its peak after Nie Donglio's death and entering the demonic state. The hatred triggered by external objects naturally could not reach the level of entering the demonic state. Therefore, the hatred saber was useless to Nie Renlong now. It could even help him increase part of his strength. After throwing the 7-demon saber into the secret space box, Chu Xiu frowned slightly. He had miscalculated. It seemed that he had underestimated Nie Renlong. People like Nie Renlong, who were born in the wilderness, were able to reach their current status. They were all outstanding people. Not a single one of them was simple. The previous incident was a disaster for Nie Renlong, but it was also an opportunity. If he could get through it, his strength would improve greatly. Nie Renlong's palm fell, and the monstrous demonic aura covered the sky. The giant demonic aura, which was dozens of feet long, suddenly fell and smashed towards Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu moved and changed his position continuously. However, the giant demonic aura grabbed at the empty space. Wisps of demonic aura bloomed in a strange rhythm. The demonic aura was pulled by the giant demonic aura. It was like a cage, imprisoning Chu Xiu within it. In the end, it directly squeezed down, as if it wanted to crush Chu Xiu into pieces. Chu Xiu's hands formed a seal. Golden Buddha's light bloomed around his body. The sound of Sanskrit resounded between heaven and earth. A golden Vairocana shadow appeared behind Chu Xiu. In the giant demonic aura, a dazzling holy Buddha's light bloomed. Sun-changing technique. The demon-subduing Buddha's light shone between heaven and earth. Chu Xiu finally broke free from the giant demonic aura. However, this scene made everyone present feel very uncomfortable. Nie Renlong was the leader of the Northern Yen Orthodox martial world, and Chu Xiu was the demonic cultivator they wanted to kill. But now, Chu Xiu's attack was Holy Buddha's light, while Nie Renlong's was monstrous demonic aura. No matter how they looked at it, it was as if their identities were reversed. Nie Renlong looked at Chu Xiu, whose face was a little pale. He approached step by step and said coldly, "Chu Xiu, you took the initiative to come here today. When the other Northern Yen Orthodox sects come, none of you will be able to escape." Chu Xiu let out a long sigh and said indifferently, "Don't worry, the others won't be coming. Manor Lord Nie, don't tell me you still haven't realized why the Drifts Now City and the Huangfu clan have yet to arrive?" Nie Renlong frowned slightly. Did the Yinma clan intercept them? No. It's impossible for the Yinma clan to mobilize all of them. Do you really want another war between the righteous and the demonic? Nie Renlong knew very well about the attack on the Guanzhong torture room to kill Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu was a member of the Yinma clan, but he couldn't represent the entire Yinma clan. Even if Chu Xiu was the true heir of the Kunlun devil cult and the successor of Dugu Weiwei, the Yinma clan wouldn't risk everything for him and start another war between the righteous and the demonic. Having been in Jianghu for so long, Nie Renlong naturally knew that compared with the bright demon lineage and the moon-worshipping sect, the hidden demon lineage actually did not have a real leader. Their model was also very similar to the alliance, an alliance without a leader. If something happened to Chu Xiu, Wei Shuya's clan might intervene, but as for the others, they might not even intervene. Unless a true expert like Dugu Weiwei appeared and unified the demonic path, no one could command the entire Yinma clan. Nie Renlong couldn't figure out how Chu Xiu had stopped the other Northern Yen martial arts forces. In fact, just as he was about to go on stage, Wei Shuya and the others had already made their move. At this moment in the Great Light Temple, a flustered disciple of the Great Light Temple ran to Su Xing's residence and reported loudly, "Chief, there's news from outside that Chu Xiu has brought a large number of warriors from the Guanzhong torture room and the Yinma clan into the Northern Yen." He didn't hide his tracks at all, and went straight to the memorial hall. When Su Xing heard this, he immediately exploded and snorted coldly. How dare he? He actually dared to take the initiative to attack. gather the disciples of the Dharma court, and prepare to leave immediately. But then Su Xing thought of something and snorted softly. I'll go and talk to senior brother Su Yin first. Now that he was still being punished to go into seclusion, the consequences would not be as simple as being punished to go into seclusion. Chapter 644. In Su Yun's meditation hall, Su Xing originally thought that Su Yin would ask him to follow him to the memorial hall after he reported to Su Yin. However, after Su Yin heard that, he called a disciple and said, "Go find Su Du, ask him to go to the memorial hall with me." Su Xing hurriedly said, "Senior brother, then I." Su Yin glanced at him and said plainly, "Continue to cultivate in seclusion in the Great Light Temple. If you don't completely suppress the anger in your heart within a year, forget about the Great Light Temple. You don't even need to be the Dharma court's first seat. The appointment or pardon of the first seats of the 6 martial academies should be decided by the abbot." However, in the Great Light Temple, Su Yin had this power and ability. Hearing Su Yin say this, Su Xing did not dare to refute at all. He could only return to the Dharma court and continue cultivating in seclusion. After a while, Su Du lazily came to Su Yun's meditation hall. He was still carrying a wine gourd, but this time, the wine gourd was filled with sugar water. "Follow me to the memorial hall," Su Yin said in a deep voice. This time, Su Du did not continue to talk nonsense. He obediently followed Su Yin and left the Great Light Temple. Although he was a little unreliable and indecent most of the time, he would not delay matters related to the Great Light Temple. However, as they walked, Su Du said, "Senior brother, has the kid from the hidden devil lineage lost his mind? At this time, instead of guarding his Guanzhong torture room, he dares to come to the Northern Yen. Does he not want to die fast enough?" Su Yin said plainly, "Don't think of others as idiots on the spot. Once something happens, it has its own reason. Maybe we don't need to go to the memorial hall. Someone will take the initiative to find us." Su Du touched his bald head. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly heard a voice say, "Master Su Yin, you really have great foresight. I haven't seen you for a long time. It seems that your vain heavenly freedom scripture has improved again." Wei Shuya was dressed in black. He squinted his eyes and stood by the side of the road like an ordinary old man sunbathing. Chu Wuji stood behind him with a sharp gaze and did not say a word. Su Yin looked at Wei Shuya and chanted, "Ba. So it's Elder Wei. After so many years, aside from the Battle of Mount Fuyu, this is the second time you've taken action. It seems that Chu Xiu is really someone you value for you to take action personally." Du looked at Su Yin in surprise. He knew his senior brother's character. He was a monk, but he didn't. He knew his senior brother's character. He didn't like Yin. He only said it when he saw that Shuya, this old fellow who looked like he was about to be buried, was actually so terrifying. Was he worthy of senior brother's attention? This Su was so. Was that old was so he was terrifying. Was Yin. Was. Yin, he said. Sect, Yin is Yin, Yin go. Su Yin, Yin go back. Our demonic path has been suppressed by the righteous path for so many years. It's time for us to come out and bask in the sun. Eastern Qi, Northern Yen and Western Chu. Our hidden devil path doesn't occupy them. We're just showing our heads in the Guanzhong torture room. Do you want to stop us? Don't go overboard." Su Yin said calmly, "Since the hidden devil path has declined, why don't we continue to decline? Elder Wei, you're the only survivor of the Battle of Nine Heaven Mountain. You should know how cruel that battle was. 4 of your 9 heaven mountains 5 sky demons died. Countless demonic path martial artists died. If you chose to continue tolerating and not openly restore the Kunlun devil cult, so many people wouldn't have died. If you hide underground, you can live. If you show yourself, you will die. You let Chu Xiu do this. You're not helping him. You're harming him. When he really touches the bottom line of the righteous path, I won't be the only one to make a move." Wei Shuya's squinted eyes slowly opened. His expression was extremely sharp. The aura on his body also gradually rose. From an old man who looked like he had 1 foot in the grave, he became the demonic path's overlord who stirred up the world in the past. "Why don't you tolerate? For so many years, our hidden devil path has always been called earth mice. If I'm afraid of being a earth mouse for too long, I'll really become a group of cowardly mice who are greedy for life and afraid of death. While I'm still alive, I'll leave some courage for the young people. I'll be an example. If an old man like me is afraid of death, then the hidden devil path will really have no hope. Even if Patriarch Dugu comes back to life, I'm afraid he won't be interested in trash like us. Su Yun, there are only two people in the Great Light Temple that I'm not confident in dealing with. One is your abbot, and the other is you. It's said that the Dantian Great Freedom scripture combines the essence of the Zen and Tantric sections. Today, I'd like to experience it for myself. As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic flames around Wei Shia soared into the sky, and a terrifying power erupted from his seemingly old body. He took a step forward, and the heavens and earth darkened as he punched out. The demon god was shocked and enraged. Su Yin sighed. He recited the scripture, and the murmuring of Sanskrit could be faintly heard from heaven and earth. A golden Buddhist light enveloped his entire body. As Su Yin took a step forward, it actually turned into a domain. Everywhere Su Yin passed, it all turned into a domain. With every step he took, he became a Buddhist land. With every step he took, he became a Buddhist land. Of these two people, one was the only survivor of the 9 great heavenly demons in the past. He had once stirred up the Jianghu with his weak strength and fought against the entire righteous path of martial arts. On the other hand, the other person was a rare genius from the Great Light Temple in recent years. As the first seat of wishful thought Zen Hall, he had suppressed the abbot's limelight. The might of the battle between the two of them could be said to be earth-shattering. Su Du put away the wine gourd and smiled at Chu Wuji. Don't just stand there. Let's hurry up and get started. The sooner we finish, the better. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Du's body was shrouded in Buddhist light. He who originally looked a little indecent was now solemn. He pinched the demon-subduing seal. And when the seal fell, the Buddha subdued the demon and suppressed the world. The power was extremely fierce and terrifying. Chu Wuji also sneered. A blood moon loomed behind him. He had no saber in his hand, but he used the blood moon as a blade to tear the world apart. Two true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses fought with two martial arts masters at the peak of the real pellet state. The power was earth-shattering. Even if a small mountain was smashed, it would not be surprising. At this moment, 100 miles away from the battle, the northern fluttering snow city lord by Hantian was also preparing to bring his men to the morgue. However, he was stopped by someone. The person who stopped him was none other than Pang Hu and the Chilean Iron Cavalry under his command. Last time, the morgue joined forces with the Eastern Yen martial arts to annihilate the Chilean Iron Cavalry. In the end, Chu Xiu plotted to let the northern floating snow city intervene. In the end, the morgue and Chilean Iron Camp were both severely damaged. The only one who benefited was the northern floating snow city. Bai Hantian looked at Pang Hu and said coldly, Pang Hu, with the strength of your Chilean Iron Camp, you dare to intervene in the matter between the Northern Yen martial arts and the Yinma clan. Are you courting death? Pang Hu sneered and said, courting death? I'm afraid your northern floating snow city doesn't have the right to kill me. Last time, it was Lin Yi. No, it should be Chu Xiu who helped me. I, Pang Hu, am a crude man. The northern 36 bandits are just a bunch of bandits. However, even if they were bandits, they still had to be moral. They helped me last time. If I turn a blind eye this time, I'm afraid my brothers will look down on me. Don't you think so? Yes. The Chilean Iron Camp bandits behind Pang Hu shouted one after another. Their aura was extraordinary. Bai Hantian frowned and snorted coldly. Ignorant. If you want to die, I'll grant your wish. With a wave of Bai Hantian's hand, a group of northern floating snow city warriors rushed forward. The northern floating snow city was one of the major sects in the Jianghu, one of the 7 sects and 8 schools. Compared to the Chilean Iron Camp, which was a bandit force, they still had a great advantage. The northern lands were in a mess. At the same time, in the west of Yen, outside the gates of the Huangfu clan, thousands of northern Yen soldiers dressed in black armor had surrounded the Huangfu clan's mansion. Among the soldiers, there was an extremely luxurious black dragon carriage. A middle-aged warrior dressed in a black python robe was lying on it. His posture was graceful, and he was yawning as he slowly peeled a banana. Being in the northern Yan lands, yet being able to eat bananas that were only grown in the western Chu southern barbarians, such extravagant behavior was comparable to that of an emperor. In fact, this person was indeed of royal birth. The black dragon carriage that he sat in could only be used by an emperor. However, the northern Yan did not respect the black dragon anymore, so no one would say anything about him sitting in the black dragon carriage. This was because many people in the northern Yan knew that he would not rebel against anyone in the royal family. This guy was just lazy. This person was from the northern Yan royal family. His name was Xiang Wu, but he was a collateral relative of the royal family. His bloodline was very faint and was not valued. Even Xiang Wu's title was only a marquis. Because his fief was in the northern Yan's Limping prefecture, his title was Marquis of Limping. Xiang Wu showed amazing martial arts talent when he was young. However, because his bloodline was not valued too much, he was ignored by the northern Yan royal family. This caused Xiang Wu to wander around in Jianghu. It was not until he made a name for himself in Jianghu that he was discovered by the northern Yan royal family, and was immediately summoned back to the royal family. Xiang Long was indeed a great ruler. After discovering his negligence, he treated Xiang Wu with enough respect. He personally found a strong ancestor of the royal family to teach Xiang Wu and recognized him as a younger brother. He gave him the command of the West Hill Army of the 5 armies of the kingdom, and gave him the title of general. He even wanted to raise his title to the rank of king. However, Xiang Wu refused. In his words, this was something left behind by his ancestor and could not be lost. He did not know if his ancestor would be so angry that he would open his own coffin if he knew that his descendants did not want the title of king, but still held the title of marquis as a treasure. Chapter 645. Xiang Wu was sent by Xiang Long to deal with the Huangfu clan. It was said that even the old ancestor of the Huangfu clan, who had always been in seclusion, would be mobilized, which was why Xiang Long sent Xiang Wu. It was said that the Huangfu clan's old ancestor had the strength of the true fire spirit refinement state. Although Xiang Wu had not reached the true fire spirit refinement state, he was not far from it. The northern Yan royal family's old ancestor had once said that in terms of strategy, among the modern northern Yan emperors, few could compare with Xiang Long. In terms of talent in martial Dao, not to mention the northern Yan royal family, even in the entire Jianghu, Xiang Wu was one of the top ones. With Xiang Wu and the pressure from the northern Yan imperial court, the Huangfu clan should know what to do as long as they were not out of their minds. At this time, besides Xiang Wu, a martial Dao grandmaster with a scholarly demeanor and clad in battle armor said helplessly, "Marquis." Xiang Wu handed him a banana and said, "Mind the occasion, call me General." The middle-aged man took the banana and said, "General, although His Majesty has decided to cooperate with Chu Xiu this time, he only asked you to stop the Huangfu clan. But now, you have surrounded the Huangfu clan. Don't you think it's a little too much?" Xiang Wu took a bite of the banana and said, "Too much? Do you know why His Majesty wants to cooperate with Chu Xiu? To be precise, he wants to cooperate with the Hidden Demon clan, because these Jianghu people have crossed the line. It's time to teach them a lesson. Even if I go a little too far, His Majesty won't blame me, let alone besieging the Huangfu clan. Do you believe me? By the way, Oldine, I remember that you have interacted with this Chu Xiu before? This kid is quite a talent. What do you think?" This seemingly elegant middle-aged man used to be the general of the mountain calming army, Jiuhuin Luohua, who was responsible for guarding East Yan and other places. He also had the strength of a martial Dao grandmaster. In the past, when Chu Xiu was an assassin in the Blue Dragon Society, there were people from the mountain subduing army who were involved in the extermination of the Yao family. However, at that time, Chu Xiu was just a small-time assassin in the Blue Dragon Society, and Yin Luohua was a general who was about to step into the martial Dao grandmaster realm. He only asked about Chu Xiu a little, but he didn't have any contact with him. Later, Yin Luohua stepped into the realm of Wu Dao Grand Master, and was transferred to the West Hill Army, one of the 5 national armies, as a deputy general. Since then he had no contact with Chu Xiu. Therefore, Yin Luohua just shook his head and said, I've only heard of Chu Xiu in the past. After all, Chu Xiu is actually quite famous in East Yan. When he was young, he was already ruthless. Moreover, he acted boldly and decisively. One could tell that he was not an ordinary person. It's just that there are many outstanding talents in Jianghu. Most people want to stand out, but what they lack is luck. For Chu Xiu to be able to reach this step, it's really a stroke of luck. Xiang Wu chuckled and said, Luck? Luck can make people temporarily reach a high position, but it can't help them for a lifetime. For Chu Xiu to be able to come this far, he didn't just rely on luck. Even I'm a little curious about this lad. At this time, Xiang Wu suddenly looked at Yin Luohua and said, I say, old Yin, why don't you eat it? I specially asked people to transport this thing from the southern barbaric land. One is more expensive than a pot of 10-leaf fragrance in the drunken immortal house. It can strengthen one's sex drive and is very nourishing. Yin Luohua looked at the banana in his hand and said with a strange face, I say, Marquis. No, General, don't lie to me. My mother was born in the southern barbaric land. I stayed there for a period of time when I was young. This thing is all over the trees there. It's not valuable. Some of the local barbarians eat it as a meal. Xiang Wu snorted disdainfully and said, Don't you know that form complements form? I have consulted Imperial Physician 1, and Imperial Physician 1 told me so. You see, this thing is so yellow, so thick, so long. At first glance, it can strengthen one's sex drive. Yin Luohua looked at the banana in his hand. He often ate this thing when he was young, but now that Xiang Wu said this, he seemed to be unable to eat it. At the same time, Yin Luohua was also speechless to the extreme. In the past, when Yin Luohua was the general of the mountain-subduing army, he was also famous for his vicious and gloomy means. Otherwise, he wouldn't get the nickname Jiuhu. As a result, when he was transferred to Xiang Wu's command, he suddenly felt that his outlook on life had somewhat collapsed. It was this general of the West Hill Army who seemed to have been transferred to the extreme. Every time after Yin Luohua said his plan, he directly crushed everything with his strength. At the same time, he also destroyed Yin Luohua's outlook on life. When one's strength was strong to a certain extent, one could indeed ignore any intrigues. Just when Yin Luohua was hesitating whether he should give face to Marquis and eat the banana or not, the door of the Huangfu clan was suddenly opened. A group of Huangfu clan's disciples came out. There were at least 1,000 of them, and they were aggressive. The leader was an old man in a golden robe. His hair and beard were all white. He looked very old, but his figure was straight, and a dignified momentum arose spontaneously. Behind the old man were 3 warriors at the martial Dao Grand Master level. Among them was Huangfu Weiming, who had dealt with Chu Xiu in Xiaofan Heaven. The Huangfu clan had always been very low-key among the 9 great families. Of course, the reason why they kept a low profile was because they were not strong enough. In fact, when the Huangfu clan was at its peak, they even competed with the Shangshuaying clan for the position of the top of the 9 great families. However, although the Huangfu clan was still in a declining stage, there was still a patriarch who had reached the true fire spirit refinement realm guarding the clan, and 3 martial Dao Grand Masters who were not weak. This strength was already considered very strong among the 9 great families, but for the current Huangfu clan, it was obviously not enough. The Huangfu clan's patriarch said in a deep voice, So it's Marquis Xiang. I don't know what you mean by this. You even sent troops to surround the Huangfu clan. During this period of time, the Huangfu clan did not seem to have done anything against the laws of the imperial court, right? Even if the imperial court wants to touch the Huangfu clan, there must be a reason. Otherwise, the Huangfu clan must get an explanation even if we have to sacrifice our last disciple. Even if we don't get an explanation today, there will be other martial artists who will get it for us in the future. Patriarch Huangfu believed that the imperial court would not do something like that without a proper explanation. This was not because the Northern Yan imperial court was very particular about the rules, but because they did not dare to do so. The imperial court's advantage was their numbers, but what was the Jianghu's advantage? Wherever there were people, it was the Jianghu. The Northern Yan imperial court was indeed powerful, but if the imperial court went overboard and angered the Northern Yan martial world, the entire Northern Yen martial world might unite and change the dynasty, forcing the Northern Yen royal family to change their surname. If the Northern Yen imperial court really dared to destroy the Huangfu clan without saying a word, the consequences would be severe. If a force like the Huangfu clan was annihilated by the imperial court without saying a word, then it was easy to imagine what would happen to the other sects that were weaker than the Huangfu clan. Therefore, Patriarch Huangfu believed that the imperial court would not do something so stupid. Xiangwu laughed. Senior Huangfu, you've misunderstood. The Huangfu clan is doing fine. Why would the imperial court touch you? Ancestor Huangfu snorted coldly. He pointed at the armored elites of the West Hill Army and said coldly, "Then what do these people mean? Marquis, did you come to my Huangfu clan with such great fanfare just to enjoy the scenery?" Xiangwu stood up and laughed. "It's a refreshing autumn day and the scenery around your Huangfu clan is so beautiful. It's the perfect place to enjoy the scenery." Suddenly, Xiangwu thought of something and tossed another banana to Patriarch Huangfu. This is a specialty of the southern barbarian land. It's very nutritious and suitable for an old man like you, Senior Huangfu. Formless energy flashed in front of Patriarch Huangfu, crushing the banana into pieces. Marquis, please don't change the topic. Don't be so perfunctory. What is the imperial court's intention today? Xiangwu's face darkened when he saw Patriarch Huangfu shatter his banana without giving him any face. I gave you face, but you don't want it. Since you don't want to eat a banana, I'll eat a knife. His Majesty has ordered that from now on, no one from the Huangfu clan is allowed to step out of Yanqi Pingyao. Anyone who dares to do so will be killed. Patriarch Huangfu was so angry that he laughed. What a joke. Do we need to ask for your permission if we want to leave? What is the imperial court trying to do? Imprison my Huangfu clan? Xiangwu said indifferently. I've already said that this is His Majesty's order. Your Huangfu clan can only abide by it. I won't imprison you for too long. It'll be over soon. Patriarch Huangfu frowned and suddenly thought of something. How long? Xiangwu pointed to the east and said, You can leave when the battle at the Morgue village is over. Patriarch Huangfu's heart skipped a beat. Something must have happened at the morgue. Frowning at Xiangwu, Patriarch Huangfu said in a low voice, What is the imperial court trying to do? They want to protect Chu Xiu, a demon from the Yinma clan. Does His Majesty not know about Chu Xiu's identity and the nature of the Yinma clan? Or are you the one who made the decision on your own? Xiangwu chuckled. Senior Huangfu, there are some things that we can still talk about even though you've seen through it. To put it bluntly, the imperial court never cares if you're righteous or evil. They only care if you're obedient or not. So it's time to test your Huangfu clan. If you're obedient, go back. When the battle is over, I'll leave with my men immediately. A sharp glint flashed across Patriarch Huangfu's eyes. What if I don't listen? Xiangwu stood up from the black dragon chariot, the aura around him rising to the extreme, stirring up the winds and clouds. Just based on his aura alone, he could already stand shoulder to shoulder with a martial artist of Chu Wuji's level. He was only a step away from entering the true fire spirit refinement realm. If you don't listen to me, then I won't be polite to you anymore. Give me back my banana. Chapter 646. The Huangfu ancestor was actually someone who could endure patiently. In the pugilistic world, those who reached the third level of spirit condensation were basically big shots who stood at the pinnacle. Those who reached the martial true core realm were known as masters, and they were the experts who had appeared in front of the pugilistic world for the longest time. Those who reached the heaven and earth illumination realm could be counted on one's fingers, and almost all of them were top figures on the sovereign ranking. Most of them didn't often appear in the pugilistic world, so those at the true fire spirit refinement realm could definitely stir up a storm. However, the Huangfu ancestor had clearly reached this realm, and he wasn't at the brink of death from old age. Yet, he still chose to cultivate in seclusion in the Huangfu clan for more than a decade. It wasn't because he was afraid of death, but because he wanted to use the last of his time to escort the Huangfu clan to its final journey. Although the Huangfu clan still had a true fire spirit refinement realm expert like him, the next generation was mediocre, and there weren't many outstanding figures in the younger generation. Therefore, for the sake of the Huangfu clan, he could only choose to stay in the clan and protect it during this period of decline. However, keeping a low profile and enduring patiently didn't mean that the Huangfu ancestor was a weakling. How could a junior like Xiangwu act so arrogantly in front of him, and even take the initiative to attack him? How could the Huangfu ancestor tolerate that? In that instant, he drew a pitch-black coiling dragon spear from the black dragon carriage, and held it in his hand. It was a simple thrust, but it caused the dark clouds in the sky to gather and form a huge cyclone. With a dragon's roar, it came crashing down at the Huangfu ancestor. The eyes of the dragon head on the coiling dragon spear flickered with scarlet killing intent, as if it was alive. The coiling dragon spear in Xiangwu's hand was also a divine weapon. The Huangfu ancestor raised his head abruptly as divine light gathered in his eyes. Wherever it passed, all the astral energy dissipated, and even the phenomenon formed by Xiangwu's spear collapsed. However, Xiangwu's spear still bore the powerful force and pierced straight towards Ancestor Huangfu's chest. Wherever it passed, the earth would crack and sonic booms would ring out. It was an extremely ferocious attack. Ancestor Huangfu snorted coldly. He reached out his hand and grabbed Xiangwu's spear in the nick of time. Golden stellar energy erupted as his other hand slammed into the spear, sending Xiangwu flying. His feet landed on the ground, creating a crater that was several tens of feet wide. Xiangwu laughed heartily. Is this the Huangfu clan's secret technique, Spirit Annihilation Eyes? A secret technique that can annihilate all astral energy and origin energy. Interesting. It's much stronger than the Ice Soul Divine Eye of the extreme North Snowdrift City. Even though Xiangwu had already fallen into a disadvantageous position in just a single exchange, one mustn't forget that there was an entire realm of difference between the two of them. The strength that Xiangwu had revealed now was sufficiently shocking. Xiangwu laughed heartily as he continued to charge forward with his spear in hand. For someone like him who was usually incomparably lazy, this was the only time he could be truly excited. Previously, they thought that Chu Xiu could only choose to defend himself in the Guanzhong torture room. They didn't expect him to be so bold and take the initiative to attack. Previously, they had thought that in such a situation, Chu Xiu could only choose to think of a countermeasure in the Guanzhong disciplinary hall. They had not expected him to be so daring and dare to take the initiative to attack. Therefore, the forces that noticed the commotion were waiting for the result from the morgue. If Chu Xiu won, they would pretend that they knew nothing and ignore the demon-killing alliance. If Chu Xiu won at the morgue village, they would act as if they didn't know anything. They wouldn't have anything to do with the demon-killing alliance. Therefore, everything depended on the result of the battle at the morgue. Of course, it also depended on whether Wei Shuya and the others could stop the other forces. But if the morgue won, they could take the opportunity to attack the Guanzhong torture room and gain some fame and benefits. If they couldn't stop them and the others came to help Nie Renlong, Chu Xiu would be in danger. At this moment in the morgue, after Nie Renlong learned that the northern drifting snow city and the other forces were stopped by Chu Xiu, he coldly said, "If they don't come, then they won't come. Even without those people, they would at most let some of the Devil Path's remnants escape. But you, Chu Xiu, don't think of leaving the morgue alive. Also, that's all you have. Eastern Qi may be a little slow, but it won't be long before they make their move. The Guanzhong torture room that you've been trying to protect will be destroyed. If you hide underground like a rat, I won't be able to kill you in a short time. But you're unwilling to let go of the Guanzhong torture room, and came to me. You're courting death. Chu Xiu, your 7 demons saber can trigger a person's 7 emotions and 6 desires. Have you ever thought that one day, you will die because of your greed? Greed? If people weren't greedy, the world would have been at peace a long time ago. But if you want me to die here, I'm afraid you're thinking too much." The heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand was surging with fiery demonic qi. The demonic qi that the formation emitted was absorbed by the heavenly demon dance and condensed into a demonic shadow that floated behind Chu Xiu. Although Chu Xiu was not a martial Dao grandmaster yet, his strength was comparable to a martial Dao grandmaster's. At least in terms of the use of strength, most martial Dao grandmasters were no match for Chu Xiu. In fact, Nie Renlong was right about one thing. Chu Xiu was indeed greedy. This time, if he gave up the Guanzhong torture room and went to some secret places of the Yinma clan to hide for a period of time, it would only be a few years. After all, people in Jianghu were forgetful. After a few years, even if there were still people who wanted to make trouble for him, they would not be able to form an alliance of this scale. But as Nie Renlong said, Chu Xiu couldn't let go of the Guanzhong torture room. He had spent a lot of effort to get it. If his identity had not been exposed and Divine Lord Luo had not taken action, Chu Xiu was even confident that he could completely take over the Guanzhong torture room, as long as he was given more time. The greed in Chu Xiu's heart was indeed strong. To be precise, Chu Xiu was not greedy. He just felt insecure and wanted to continue to climb up. With Chu Xiu's current status and strength, as long as he was willing to leave the Yinma clan, he could live a comfortable life whether he went to the imperial court or the moon-worshipping cult. There was no need for him to live such a dangerous and hard life. Such a choice was not because of how loyal Chu Xiu was to the Yinma clan, nor was it because he was a masochist. It was just that Chu Xiu wanted more things, which he could not get by joining the imperial court or the moon-worshipping cult. In fact, many people had this kind of mentality, including those famous martial Dao grandmasters, and the Northern Yan emperor like Xianglong. They would more or less have this kind of feeling. Those martial Dao grandmasters were already standing at the top of Jianghu. Their cultivation and strength surpassed 99% of martial artists in Jianghu. Why did they still cultivate in seclusion and pursue greater power? It was because they felt insecure. Although they were strong enough, when they looked up, they could still see the powerhouses at the top. Those who could cultivate to the martial Dao grandmaster realm were not mediocre. They did not want to be stepped on by others for the rest of their lives while they could only look up. Even the world's #1 heavenly lord of the Mahasvara, Zhong Shenxiu, might be looking up at the realm that Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji had reached in the past. Nie Renlong did not understand Chu Xiu's state of mind. He thought that Chu Xiu was very greedy, but in fact, Chu Xiu's greed was more than he imagined. The heavenly demon dance slashed down, and boundless demonic qi erupted. Wherever this blade passed, endless heaven and earth's essence qi was devoured. Nie Renlong's heaven and earth cloud hand stirred the world, but the power was still devoured by Chu Xiu's blade. This was the power of the greedy blade. He often used the 7 demon blades. In addition to the hatred blade, Chu Xiu even slowly comprehended the true meaning of the greedy blade. The 7 demon blades were essentially the extreme evolution of human emotions. As long as Chu Xiu could completely control these emotions, even if Chu Xiu did not have the 7 demon blades, or even if he did not have a blade, he could still control the power of these emotions. The greedy blade devoured everything, even as if it wanted to devour the heavens and the earth. This greed did not belong to Nie Renlong, but to Chu Xiu. Greed, anger, obsession, hate, love, evil, and desire were the demons of the heart, but they were also the source of power. Nie Renlong roared and tore forward with one hand. The yin and yang of heaven and earth reversed, and 2 completely different forces constantly twisted. One was the purest astral energy in the world, and the other was the evil demonic qi in the surroundings. As the 2 forces intertwined, they enveloped Chu Xiu's blade. As the astral energy exploded, Chu Xiu's figure was blasted backward. Even the greedy blade could not devour this powerful force for a while. However, at this moment, an extremely powerful devouring force came from behind Nie Renlong. A middle-aged martial artist dressed in black stood behind him. From his mouth, a 2-horned evil hungry ghost broke free. It roared and rushed towards Nie Renlong to devour him. Wherever it passed, even the heaven and earth essence energy was devoured. This thing was Chu Xiu's hungry ghost realm incarnation. In fact, Chu Xiu had already placed the hungry ghost realm incarnation here. However, he did not control the human puppet to attack it. After all, the human puppet was just an inanimate object. When it did not move, it would not reveal its aura. Therefore, Nie Renlong had thought that it was just an ordinary demonic martial artist. But when the hungry ghost realm incarnation moved, Nie Renlong finally realized that there was such a great evil hidden here. He was actually so close to it. Nie Renlong no longer cared about attacking Chu Xiu. He stepped forward, and although his steps seemed chaotic, they seemed to form a strange array. At the same time, he formed a seal with both hands, and the yin and yang of heaven and earth reversed. The heaven and earth essence energy within a radius of more than 10 feet seemed to be divided, like a cage, trapping the hungry ghost realm incarnation within. But at this moment, Chu Xiu, who had already escaped, formed a colorless sealing palm seal and slammed it down on Nieren Long. Sumeru mustard seed, reverse heaven and earth. Chapter 647. Realm and combat power were not absolute. Just like the current Chu Xiu, he no longer put ordinary martial arts Grand Master in his eyes. Even in the face of Nieren Long, who was on the martial arts ranking list, he dared to take the initiative to counterattack. The hungry ghost Taoist incarnation devoured everything, and Chu Xiu's powerful colorless stop grand handprint fell in front of him. The offensive and defensive momentum had been reversed in an instant. Nieren Long roared, and powerful Gang Qi burst out from his body, drawing in the power of heaven and earth. As he waved his hands, yin and yang reversed, and two completely different powers converged into a storm that swept out, with a hint of blood in it. The boundless storm swept Nieren Long into it, and it even devoured the hungry ghost Taoist incarnation. In the end, even Chu Xiu was involved in the storm. He could only resist the power of the storm with the colorless stop grand handprint. Nieren Long's martial arts inheritance was actually not powerful. His martial arts were very mixed. After reaching the martial arts Grandmaster realm, he combined these martial arts with his own martial arts understanding and finally condensed them into this heaven and earth cloud hand. This martial arts technique, or a kind of martial arts, was actually not eye-catching at a low level, but at this time in Nieren Long's hands, this martial arts technique almost exerted the power of the real pellet state to the extreme, using 1% of strength to stir the heaven and earth. Such borrowing power was considered to be in line with Nieren Long's own style. In the storm, the hungry ghost Taoist incarnation was constantly devouring the power. It could hold on, but the human puppet couldn't. The human puppet had been refined by Gongshu Yuan using An Liunyin's body. It was unknown whether or not it would have been able to defeat Nieren Long when it was alive. Now that it was dead, its body would naturally not be able to withstand the impact. This thing was not easy to get. Chu Xiu still wanted to use it a few more times, so he could only let it retreat and withdraw from the storm for the time being. Clenching his hands, the storm burst, and the aura scattered in all directions. Nieren Long stood in place with a slightly pale face. He couldn't control this level of power for too long. However, just as he was about to check whether Chu Xiu was dead or not, Devil Qi and Buddhist light burst out from the scattered Gang Qi at the same time. Chu Xiu's figure was like a demon god as he charged out of the earth Qi storm. His hands formed the 9 words formula of fast and slow, and the 9 seals combined into one. With an unparalleled power, he crushed down on Nieren Long. Chu Xiu wouldn't die so easily if he cultivated the 9 heavens fiend golden body, and the great Vajra divine strength at the same time. In terms of defense, he was also stronger than most martial Dao masters. Nieren Long met the attack with his palms. His left palm was surging with stellar energy, while his right palm was surging with demonic energy. The two powers entangled and intertwined, increasing their power by several times. An explosive sound burst out between Nieren Long and Chu Xiu. With the two of them as the center, the ground beneath their feet cracked inch by inch, and the cracks spread out for hundreds of feet. Nieren Long's face was pale, but Chu Xiu's was even paler. His explosive power was indeed amazing. However, he had forcefully resisted Nieren Long's attack earlier, and now he had to use the colorless stopping palm and 9 seals combined into one, which consumed a lot of energy. Even Chu Xiu was a little overwhelmed. However, no matter how overwhelmed he was, Chu Xiu had to kill Nieren Long as soon as possible. Otherwise, his raid on the morgue would be meaningless, and he might even put himself in danger. After his attack failed, Chu Xiu immediately pointed out with a finger. Everywhere it passed, everything was destroyed. Heavenly retribution, holy deity slaying finger. The deathly still energy caused Nieren Long to be extremely shocked. As he defended himself, his figure retreated hastily, but he was still brushed by the finger that was filled with death qi. His arm was instantly dyed pitch black by the death qi, and the deathly still aura was nibbling away at his qi, blood, and meridians. Nie Renlong's face suddenly changed, and he swung his arm. In an instant, a large amount of blood and a black death chi were forced out by him, but his arm was temporarily crippled. At this moment, Chu Xiu used his spirit as a bow, condensed his spiritual power into an arrow, and the soul-extinguishing arrow burst out. No matter how Nie Renlong dodged, the heaven's sun gazing at air skill locked onto his trace. Seeing that there was no way to dodge, Nie Renlong roared, and the power of his chi and blood burst out. He wanted to resist the arrow, but the soul-extinguishing arrow entered his body, and he let out a painful roar. Chu Xiu's figure directly pressed on. Although his face was pale because of the excessive consumption, he still slashed with the sky demon dance in his hand. After a few moves, Nie Renlong was on the verge of death. The battle between Chu Xiu and Nie Renlong would end like this. No one present, even Nie Renlong himself, had expected it. After all, one of them was an expert on the list, and although the other was famous, he was only in the oneness of heaven and man realm. Last time in the Northern Yan, Nie Renlong almost killed Chu Xiu after becoming a demon. Although Nie Renlong was in a state of being a demon at that time, Nie Renlong could feel how strong Chu Xiu was at that time. However, when he saw Chu Xiu this time, he was shocked to find that Chu Xiu's strength had more than doubled. This speed was simply shocking. Of course, in reality, although Chu Xiu had improved, it was not too exaggerated. It was just that Nie Renlong had overlooked one thing. Back in the Northern Yan, Chu Xiu had appeared as Lin Yi. Therefore, at that time, Chu Xiu had not been able to use all his trump cards. Now that Chu Xiu could finally use all his strength, it was naturally not the same as it was in the past. Seeing that Nie Renlong was in danger and almost killed by Chu Xiu with a few slashes, the entire morgue fell into a pessimistic mood. Nie Renlong was the initiator and organizer of the alliance. If something happened to him, would there still be a need for the alliance to continue? Su Yan was also extremely anxious. At this time he wanted to rescue Nie Renlong, and he did not want to be entangled with Mei Qinglian anymore. With a furious roar, Su Yan's body shone with golden Buddhist flames, and he punched out with boundless power. This punch forced Mei Qinglian to retreat. However, before he could rescue her, Mei Qinglian made a comeback from behind him. Under the great technique of the Chia girl, demonic aura surged and danced, blocking Su Yan's path. However, before he could completely destroy the demonic aura, an illusion appeared in front of him. He was clearly only a short distance away from rescuing Nie Renlong, but no matter how he ran, he could not reach Nie Renlong. It was only then that Su Yan realized that he had fallen for Mei Qinglian's great technique of the Chia girl again. By the time Su Yan regained consciousness, a crimson short knife had already appeared in Mei Qinglian's hand, and she was stabbing it at Su Yan's chest. Su Yan put his palms together and spat out a thunderous sound. The Great Light Temple's lion's roar of 9 transformations was unleashed, forcing Mei Qinglian to retreat. However, before he could make a move, Mei Qinglian had actually come again, which made Su Yan go crazy. The great technique of the Chia girl of the Yin Demon Master was magical, because it was not a simple mental power illusion. Instead, it could silently invade one's mind. It was just like what had happened just now. It was clearly a head-on clash, yet Su Yan had mysteriously fallen into an illusion. He had almost been ambushed by Mei Qinglian, and he had actually not sensed it at all. This kind of silent illusionary technique was even more frightening. Su Yan was confident that he could rely on his own strength, willpower, and boundless vitality to withstand the great technique of the Chia girl. However, in reality, he had thought too much and had underestimated Mei Qinglian. In this world, one could be a thief for 1,000 days, but there was no such thing as guarding against a thief for 1,000 days. Su Yan had to maintain this tense state of mind at all times to defend against Mei Qinglian's illusion. As such, the more he fought, the more exhausted he became. At that moment, he was not even in the mood to save Nie Renlong. Su Yan wanted to save him, but he was stopped by Mei Qinglian. However, someone else had defeated his opponent on the other side. It was not Yan Huainan, who was fighting with Mr. Liu, but Fang Datong of the Giant Spirit Gang. This did not mean that Fang Datong was stronger than Yan Huainan, but rather that his opponent was rather weak. Lu Hongya was one of the weaker ones among the martial arts masters. Coupled with the fact that his legacy was not considered strong, his own power was very limited. Last time, he had been defeated in a few moves when fighting with Chu Xiu. Now, facing Fang Datong, the leader of the Giant Spirit Gang, Lu Hongya was also struggling to hold on. The Giant Spirit Martial Manual of the Giant Spirit Gang was a combination of more than 100 martial arts techniques of the Giant Spirit Gang. Although it was not considered a famous secret manual in the Jianghu, its power was not weak. After dozens of moves, Lu Hongya was already heavily injured by Fang Datong and vomited blood. After dealing with Lu Hongya, Fang Datong instinctively looked at Chu Xiu and Nie Renlong. Nie Renlong quickly said, "Leader Fang, come and help me." Fang Datong was about to attack, but at that moment, Chu Xiu said coldly, "Leader Fang, we have no enmity between us in the past. I don't mind you joining the demon-slaying alliance today. If you leave now, I'll pretend that nothing has happened. Otherwise, after I leave in defeat today, even if I'm forced to hide in the dark, I'll definitely fight the Giant Spirit Gang to the death. You ruined my future, so I'll kill your entire family. Leader Fang, you must think this through. If you attack today, you better not leave your wife, children, and the trusted subordinates of the Giant Spirit Gang. Otherwise, I'll kill every single one of them I see." Fang Datong's heart suddenly turned cold. Just as he was about to attack, he suddenly paused. He believed that with the character and strength that Chu Xiu had displayed, he was capable of doing such a thing. Even he did not have the confidence to defeat Chu Xiu in a head-on battle. Not to mention such a terrifying enemy who was shameless enough to hide in the dark, waiting to take a bite out of you at any moment. Sometimes, what was terrifying was not the ferocious tiger bearing its fangs and claws in front of you, but the venomous snake hiding in the dark, pouncing on you at any moment. Fang Datong's hesitation instantly put Nie Renlong in danger. He was almost killed by Chu Xiu's saber. He roared angrily, "Fang Datong, is there something wrong with your brain? From the moment you joined the demon-slaying alliance, there was no turning back. You believe the words of a demonic cultivator? Even if you leave, Chu Xiu will not let you off. Today, let's join forces and kill him here. Who cares about what happens next?" Chapter 648. The Giant Spirit Gang had been lukewarm until now. Although it had not declined, it had not developed much either. This had a lot to do with Fang Datong's character. This person was indeed not decisive enough, and was somewhat indecisive. At this time, he had already joined the demon-slaying alliance. However, at such a critical moment, he actually hesitated after being threatened by Chu Xiu. Anyone in his place would be gnashing their teeth in hatred. The sky demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand brought with it an overwhelming demonic energy as it slashed down. At the same time, he unleashed the great cycle of mental demons, which transformed into a soul-subduing Hades song, which kept assailing Nie Renlong, gradually weakening his power. Chu Xiu's ability to kill a martial Dao master like Nie Renlong, who had been famous for a long time, with heaven and human unity was already the limit of what Chu Xiu could do. If Fang Datong had intervened just now, the outcome of the battle might not have been certain. However, in the short moment when Fang Datong hesitated, Nie Renlong's body had already suffered a few more wounds. Seeing this, Fang Datong gritted his teeth and threw a punch at Chu Xiu. Just as Nie Renlong said, he had no way out. Regardless of whether Chu Xiu was telling the truth or not, he could only bet on Nie Renlong winning and Chu Xiu dying. Kill him. Nie Renlong advanced instead of retreating with his heavily injured body. He performed the heaven and earth cloud-reaching hand to the extreme. Yin and Yang Qi gathered in his palm, and directly entangled the heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand. He could not even get away. Seeing that Fang Datong's punch was about to land, a black figure suddenly appeared behind Chu Xiu. It opened its mouth and roared like a ferocious hungry ghost. The evil power devoured everything and directly swallowed Fang Datong. Fang Datong was fighting fiercely with Lu Hongya. Although he was stronger than Lu Hongya, he did not dare to divert his attention to other battles while fighting a martial Dao grandmaster. Therefore, he did not see the entire battle between Nie Renlong and Chu Xiu. At this moment, seeing this evil thing appearing in front of him that could devour any power, and even wanted to devour his body, Fong Datong subconsciously prepared to retreat, and then find a way to repel it. However, Fong Datong's retreat caused Nie Renlong to spit out a mouthful of blood. 70% was because he had overused his power, which affected his internal injuries, and 30% was because he was angered by Fong Datong. At this moment, Nie Renlong finally understood something. It was better to rely on oneself than on others. The so-called alliance seemed strong, but it was just a bunch of idiots dragging them down. The ones who died were always their own people. At this critical moment of life and death, Fong Datong actually chose to retreat cautiously. He was simply a coward. It did not matter if he left, but he had caused Nie Renlong to be trapped here. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Of course, Fong Datong's action was not actually to deliberately trap Nie Renlong. It was just his nature, and it was a completely subconscious reaction. Fong Datong might look tall and mighty, and his nickname was the Ferocious Mighty General. However, under his ferocious appearance, there was an extremely sensitive and cautious heart. Once there was any movement, he would choose the safest method and be extremely cautious. Unfortunately, his cautiousness this time caused Nie Renlong to die. In that instant, Chu Xiu gathered the last bit of power of his essence soul, turning it into a soul-destroying arrow and shooting it out. At such a close distance, even if Chu Xiu did not use Heaven's Sun gazing at air to lock onto Nie Renlong would not be able to escape. With his primordial spirit heavily injured, Nie Renlong let out a muffled groan. However, he actually managed to hold on, and did not lose his consciousness. Instead, all the blood and qi in his body condensed into his crippled arm. He chopped down vertically with his palm, and the exploding blood and qi were like a giant blade that slashed towards Chu Xiu. His essence soul was heavily injured, but Nie Renlong could still rely on his own willpower to maintain his consciousness. He could even use his own strength to control the power of blood and qi. This kind of tenacious state of mind was indeed incomparably shocking. Moreover, Nie Renlong had specially studied all kinds of detailed information about this great enemy of his, Chu Xiu. He knew that Chu Xiu had the Great Devil Blood technique. Under the premise that he did not have enough power to suppress the boiling of blood and qi, burning his essence blood was equivalent to suicide. Therefore, he actually came up with this method to fight with Chu Xiu for the last time, and it could be considered as using all his strength. If he burned his essence blood, Nie Renlong could still recover if he did not die this time. However, if he gathered all the blood and qi in his body in one arm, and then directly burst out at the end, it was simply equivalent to crippling his own arm. Even if he won this battle, he could only be a useless person in the future. In the face of Nie Renlong's attack, Chu Xiu's figure hurriedly retreated, but Nie Renlong's right hand suddenly grabbed, and the space around Chu Xiu's body seemed to be locked, and the qi of heaven and earth condensed behind Chu Xiu, blocking and delaying his movements. How strong would an extraordinary martial Dao master be when he burst out all the power of blood and qi? This was something that Chu Xiu did not know, and probably not many people in Jianghu knew. After all, there were not many people who could make a martial Dao master of Nie Renlong's level fight to this extent. At this moment, a lot of things popped up in Chu Xiu's mind. In fact, he still had a lot of trump cards, but even Chu Xiu himself was not sure how strong these trump cards could be. However, in the current situation, Chu Xiu was not 100% sure that he could survive Nie Renlong's desperate attack, so Chu Xiu did not have much time to think. He gently raised the demon dance in his hand, but it seemed like he was holding a mountain. Chu Xiu's entire person was immersed in a strange state. This was a martial art that he was unable to grasp. In the past, he had only glanced at it once, but he had been stimulated to the point of vomiting blood. Even now, Chu Xiu was not sure that he could completely master it, but he just needed to borrow a trace of this martial art, just a trace. As the saber slashed down, the saber intent was surging, the saber momentum was turbulent, and the saber energy was vast and surging, like a tsunami tearing the sky and the earth, drowning and devouring everything. Devouring the heavens and destroying the earth's 7 limits, sea breaking. Everything in front of Chu Xiu seemed to be divided into 2 halves in front of him. The heaven and earth yuan qi was torn by the saber qi, and it did not heal for a long time. Nie Renlong's body was also torn by this saber. Almost in an instant, Nie Renlong was no longer alive. His body was neatly cut in half, until his body fell to the ground. A large amount of blood flowed out. He did not even have the chance to use this last desperate attack, and he was killed by Chu Xiu. Nie Renlong did not die in peace. The power of this saber was somewhat beyond Chu Xiu's imagination, and similarly, the power was also beyond Chu Xiu's imagination. This was not a power that a human could control, but the power of heaven and earth. No wonder it was said that almost all those who had obtained this martial art did not have a good ending. Using the body of a human to control this saber technique that contained the power of heaven and earth was itself the power of stealing heaven and earth, and it was bound to incur the jealousy of the heavens, so dying a horrible death was considered normal. At this moment, although Chu Xiu had not reached the point of dying a horrible death, after this saber slash, faint cracks appeared all over Chu Xiu's body, like a porcelain doll that had been smashed. Even though Chu Xiu cultivated the nine heavens' demonic golden body, and the great King Kong divine strength, he could not withstand this powerful force. Blood seeped out from those cracks, making Chu Xiu look as if he had been fished out of a vat of blood. It was very frightening. Turning to look at Fang Datong, Chu Xiu suddenly revealed a trace of a smile on his face. His whole body was blood red, except for his snow-white teeth, but it gave off an extremely awe-inspiring feeling. Leader Fang, you made the wrong choice. There are many choices in this life, but some of them are related to one's life. Unfortunately, you made the wrong choice. Seeing this scene, Fang Datong did not say anything and directly turned to flee. It was not that he was timid, but he knew the gap between him and Nie Renlong. Now that even Nie Renlong was dead, the alliance must have been disbanded. Instead of going back to think of a way to deal with Chu Xiu's revenge, would he still stay here to seek death? However, at this moment, Fang Datong did not know that Chu Xiu could not even move a step. He had only forcefully put on a show, but he did not expect Fang Datong to be so easily scared away. Chu Xiu still had dozens of preparation methods to show off. Of course, this could not be blamed on Fang Datong's cowardice. He was incomparably cautious. Even if Chu Xiu were to sing an empty fort strategy in front of him, Fang Datong probably would not dare to test him. At this moment in the battlefield, Nie Renlong's death and Fang Datong's escape were a devastating blow to the demon-slaying alliance, especially those small forces who were not strong enough. They did not have the mood to fight anymore, and all fled. When Yan Huainan, who was fighting with Mr. Liu, saw this scene, he sighed helplessly, turned around and fled. Yan Huainan felt a little emotional about Nie Renlong's death. The northern Yan land was not as big as the eastern Qi land, so the outstanding figures of the northern Yan martial arts world had some interaction. Although Yan Huainan and Nie Renlong were not friends, they were not enemies either. They knew each other very well. Nie Renlong was a man of ability, strength, and ambition. Unfortunately, his luck was not on his side, and he died here. The alliance was initiated by Nie Renlong. Now that he was dead, even if the people of the Great Light Temple were still here, they would not be able to defeat Chu Xiu and the others. It was worth it for him to temporarily retreat. However, Mr. Liu was not satisfied with the fight after Yan Huainan fled. Seeing that everyone in the morgue had retreated in defeat, Su Yan had no choice but to grit his teeth and say, "Warriors of the Great Light Temple, retreat immediately." Su Yan's actions were not empty words. Although he was unwilling, he still had some rationality left. If he continued fighting, he would not be slaying the demon-slaying alliance. He would be courting death. The people of the morgue were completely defeated. When the people of the righteous sects had all fled, even the people on Chu Xiu's side could not believe that they had actually won. Mei Qinglian walked over slowly. She looked a little surprised and said, "I guessed wrong. You were not gambling. You were really confident." Chu Xiu sighed and turned his face to Mei Qinglian expressionlessly. "Help me up." Chapter 649. Chu Xiu could be proud of himself for being able to kill a martial Dao master like Nie Renlong. However, Chu Xiu's physical strength had reached its limit after the kill. If not for Mei Qinglian's support, he would have collapsed to the ground. Leaning on Mei Qinglian, Chu Xiu forced himself to stay awake and said, "There's no need to chase after them. Give everyone an hour to clean up the battlefield. After that, Leave Northern Yen as quickly as possible. With Nie Renlong's death, the morgue was destroyed as well. The items in the morgue naturally belonged to Chu Xiu and the others. A force like the morgue, which did not have the time to build up its foundation, would not have many good items. At the very least, Chu Xiu did not think much of it. However, his subordinates and the people from the Enmo clan were very interested in these things, so let them plunder them. If a person in power was stingy to the extreme, then he could not expect others to risk their lives for him. At that moment, Lu Hongye walked up with a hand on his chest, looking slightly ashamed. Sir, please forgive me. I'm useless. To be honest, Lu Hongye had not deliberately gone easy on Chu Xiu to kill him. It was because he was truly no match for Fang Datong. He was now in the same boat as Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu died, he would not have a good ending either. Chu Xiu did not care about Lu Hongye's matter. When he was fighting Nie Renlong earlier, he had been paying attention to the movements around him. He also knew that Lu Hongye did not do it on purpose. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "There's no need to apologize to me. You are weak. If you are killed in the future, you should apologize to yourself." After this, there are many secret cultivation techniques in the Guanzhong torture room. You can take them for reference. There were actually many cultivation techniques in the Guanzhong torture room. In the past, when Guan Siyu was around, they were basically used as rewards for outstanding martial artists. However, now that the Guanzhong torture room was under his control, Chu Xiu could naturally give them to whoever he wanted. After completely plundering the morgue, Chu Xiu immediately left Northern Yen with his men. Of course, to be precise, it was Chu Xiu who was carried out of Northern Yen. After all, he did not even have the strength to walk. Meanwhile, in the Northern Yen, Su Yin and Wei Shuya's battle had ended. With the two of them as the epicenter, the area within a radius of several hundred zhang had been completely destroyed. It was simply impossible to see what it looked like before. One could imagine how powerful the battle between the two of them was. Su Yin stood there without moving. His expression was still calm as he said, "Old Wei, are you going to continue fighting? I dare to fight to the death, but you don't." Although Wei Shuya was also standing there, compared to Su Yin, he revealed a trace of exhaustion on his face. His complexion was even sickly pale, but there was no need for him to make another move. Wei Shuya shook his head and said, "You're wrong. It's just fighting to the death. I have never been afraid. If I were afraid, I would have been afraid back in Nine Heaven Mountain. However, you are right. There is no need to continue fighting. Let's go." With a wave of his hand, Wei Shuya called Chu Wuji, who was fighting with Su Du. The two of them left immediately. Su Du did not stop them. He just stood beside Su Yin and asked, "Senior brother, who is stronger, you or Wei Shuya?" Su Yin did not answer Su Du directly. He only said, "Unfortunately, Wei Shuya is already old. Time makes the hero. His era is over. When he broke through to the true fire spirit refinement realm, he was already too old." Su Du nodded in understanding. He understood what Su Yin meant. In the battle just now, Su Yin was stronger. If Wei Shuya could enter the true fire spirit refinement realm when he was young, he could still fight with Su Yin. However, he had passed the peak now. Of course, there was nothing for Su Yin to be proud of. There was indeed nothing to be proud of when he fought with an old man who was about to enter the declining phase of qi and blood. "By the way, senior brother, are we still going to the memorial hall?" Su Yin shook his head and said, "There is no need to go." Su Du was surprised and asked, "Why? After defeating Wei Shuya and the others, we don't have to go?" Su Yin said indifferently, "We have been delayed for so long. If Chu Xiu wins, we can only collect his corpse. On the other hand, if Chu Xiu loses, there is no point for us to go. If there are no accidents, Su Yin will bring his people back, no matter if he wins or loses." Su Du laughed and said, "Senior brother, do you really trust Su Yin that much? No matter if he wins or loses, he can bring his people back?" Among the heads of the 6 martial courtyards, I am most optimistic about Su Yin. He is also the most promising martial artist in the temple to enter the true fire spirit refinement realm in the future. The wrath of the Vajra was ignited by the fire of the heart. Although the power of the Vajra yard's cultivation method was great, it was easier to violate the precepts of anger. But you can see the result. Su Yan successfully suppressed his anger and restrained his anger. He is so calm that he doesn't look like a martial artist from the Vajra courtyard. On the contrary, Su Xing of the Dharma court can't suppress his anger. If he continues like this, he will die in his anger sooner or later. Su Du touched his bald head and said with a smile, "Shouldn't I be the most promising martial artist in the temple to enter the true fire spirit refinement realm? Senior brother, you are looking down on me." Su Yan glanced at him and said, "You don't count. If you are willing to break through the true fire spirit refinement realm in a normal way, do you still need to waste your time in the real pellet state? I'm afraid you can reach this realm long ago." Su Du laughed twice and didn't say anything. At this time, in the extreme north of the fluttering snow city, Pang Hu was covered in blood. Although Bai Hantian opposite was much better, his own consumption was also very huge. Pang Hu's strength was not weak, but he was just a bandit after all. He didn't have the deep foundation of Bai Hantian, the lord of the extreme north of the fluttering snow city. In a real fight, he was still at a disadvantage. Bai Hantian looked at Pang Hu and frowned. "Are you still not going to step aside?" Pang Hu let out a sigh of relief and waved his hand. "Retreat." Pang Hu had already done his best to resist for Chu Xiu for such a long time. If he continued to fight, he would really bury the entire Chilean village here. Seeing Pang Hu retreat, Bai Hantian wasn't very happy. Seriously injuring Pang Hu had consumed a lot of his own energy, and he needed to recover. The most important thing was that he was already late for so long. What was going on at the memorial hall? Bai Hantian didn't dare to delay, and he didn't care about recovering his strength. He immediately sent people to the memorial hall. As for the Huangfu clan, Xiang Wu was still in a heated battle with ancestor Huangfu. Xiang Wu's own strength was indeed quite shocking. Even when fighting with ancestor Huangfu, an expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm, he was only at a slight disadvantage. Of course, this was also because ancestor Huangfu didn't want to kill him. After all, Xiang Wu was only besieging the Huangfu clan, not annihilating them. Moreover, ancestor Huangfu was also aware of Xiang Wu's position in the northern Yan royal family. If he dared to kill Xiang Wu, he would have shed all pretense of cordiality with the entire northern Yan imperial court. Therefore, at this point in time, ancestor Huangfu simply stopped. He snorted coldly and ordered everyone from the Huangfu clan to return. The Huangfu clan would not be involved in this matter anymore. At this point, Xiang Wu seemed to have not had enough. He shouted at ancestor Huangfu, "Hey, you're not fighting anymore? You're leaving just like that? Why don't you fight a little longer?" Being able to fight with an expert like ancestor Huangfu, who had stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm, was very beneficial to Xiang Wu. He still hadn't had enough yet. However, ancestor Huangfu ignored him and directly brought his men back to the Huangfu clan and closed the gates. Xiang Wu shrugged helplessly. He had already gone too far by besieging the Huangfu clan. If he attacked the Huangfu clan as well, it would be equivalent to shedding all pretense of cordiality. Even if His Majesty allowed him to do as he pleased, he would not tolerate such a thing. The forces that came to support the morgue were all stopped halfway. Only the drifting snow city of the far north still insisted on coming. But before the people from the drift snow city of the extreme north arrived at the morgue, they met with the disciples who had escaped from the morgue after the collapse. When Bai Hantian heard the news, his face was filled with disbelief. Chu Xiu actually killed Nie Renlong and destroyed the morgue. Their so-called demon-slaying alliance was completely annihilated before they could even succeed. Nie Renlong's death was even more unacceptable to Bai Hantian. In the past, when they were young, Bai Hantian had already competed with Nie Renlong. The two of them had secretly fought many times, especially the last time. Nie Renlong's son had died, and he himself had turned into a demon. Under those circumstances, Nie Renlong had not died. Now he clearly had the upper hand, but he had died just like that? But when Bai Hantian arrived at the morgue and saw the corpses on the ground, especially Nie Renlong's corpse, he had to accept the reality even if he didn't want to believe it. Sighing, Bai Hantian said in a low voice, "Men, stitch up Nie Renlong's corpse and clean up this place. Bury Nie Renlong in the morgue. Dig up the mausoleum and give him a grand burial." Bai Hantian and Nie Renlong were definitely not good friends. But seeing the person who had competed with him in the past end up like this, Bai Hantian felt a little conflicted. The death of a person was like an extinguished lamp. There was no need to bring up the past grudges again. He would collect Nie Renlong's corpse and put an end to it. The Northern Yen incident was so big that all parties were paying attention to it at all times. So in less than a day, the news had spread throughout the Northern Yen martial arts world. Chu Xiu had raided the morgue and killed Nie Renlong. Experts from all sides had intercepted the reinforcements. Even the Northern Yen Imperial Court had intervened. The entire Northern Yen martial arts world was in a mess. It was hard for people to see what was going on, and to see what was going on. But the only thing that everyone could be sure of was that Chu Xiu was not easy to kill. Don't be fooled by the fact that he seemed to be in a precarious situation now. He could be completely destroyed the next day, and become a symbol of the righteous martial arts world, just like the 5 great sky demons of the 9th Heaven Mountain. But to get rid of Chu Xiu, how much would it cost? This was something that needed to be weighed carefully. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.